Hello, 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 and welcome to the Red Leaf Retrocast Worldwide Weeb Edition, the most international anime podcast of all time. It's about to become, slightly less international with our boy moving back to America.
Yeah, I mean, it happens.
I still propose the Stars and Bars cast. This podcast is brought to us, as always, by David's Tea. If you order online, there is free shipping. Hear me, free shipping if you can spend $50 US or 9 million Norwegian marks or whatever.
Only shipping in America, though.
North America.
North America.
Yeah, that's
You get 3 free tea samples with every order. And with that, let's catch up with everyone. Tori, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
All right, good talk. Hickey, how you doing? Hickey, how you doing?
silence. I'm doing fine. I'm spending my time catching up with anime after my old man had a little problem with our internet provider and canceled them, saying them to go fuck themselves. It was highly fun to watch, and I'm catching up. I have 30 episodes to catch up with from 41 shows that I need to watch, and out of the 47, and I'm also studying for my tests because they are coming.
And you were dying yesterday too. You were not feeling it yesterday.
Yeah, no, yesterday was not good. Like, I had a headache and it was awful.
All right, JD, my man, how you doing?
Well, the summer of 2017 shit show continues.
I guess.
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
Worried about my family. Those who don't know, I grew up in Houston, and Houston's kind of in a rough spot, you might say. When a whole city is cement and below sea level, and then when a massive hurricane comes, it causes a lot of damage. All of the schools I went to are now in like 5 feet of water. I believe they're now being transformed into aquariums. Luckily, my dad and mom's house is still okay, but just one street over, they're at least in 2 feet of water. Big shout out to Texas. It's very good to see when a natural disaster or just disaster in general hits, and you get to see the good side of humanity for once and reactions. It's totally the opposite of what happened with Katrina, and it's luckily family's safe. A lot of my friends lost just about everything they had. Even my buddy who lives like 11 stories up, his wife's car is flooded out. So, I don't believe in religion anything, but my brother does, and I'm sure he sends his prayers to Houston, and it's a tough situation for sure down there. It even affected. I went on vacation, and my mom and I were in Aruba.
Bahama, come on, pretty mama.
Yeah. So close to Venezuela, we were not kidnapped, so that's a positive. Aruba's very nice, but on the way back, because the hurricane hit, my mom is still stranded in Aruba now. She can get to Houston, but she can't leave the airport. It's still that flooded. I just happen to have a connecting flight through there, so my flight wasn't delayed leaving Aruba. Darn, kind of wanted to stay. Had a lot of fun. Got to go windsurfing for the first time. Not as hard as you think if you're starting out. If you know how to snowboard or surf, it's pretty easy. But you do have to have quite a bit of upper body strength to get the sail up and hold it in place. And then I lost my job.
It's been a really fucking good summer for you, man. I can tell.
Yeah, company layoffs.
Come on,
man. I was on the shit list last. It's the last one hired, first one out. So I will be leaving Canada because I'm on a work visa. And after much research and seeing where the job market might take me, Rhode Island, Southern Massachusetts, Connecticut, most likely the Rhode Island area is looking like the best option for me. So, Joe, how you doing?
Me in Rhode Island, well, I'm doing pretty good. It's a beautiful, I don't know, like 15 degrees Celsius, because most of our listener base is international, I think. So it's like 58 degrees outside. It's awesome. It's fucking beautiful outside. There's no rain. We are blind melon outside, if you get that reference.
I do not.
Okay, well, that's a song. But I spent most of my time, just like the rest of every podcast we've been on, playing video games and trying to hold off on watching anime as much as possible, because I am a scumbag. I finished watching Lain at about midnight last night, and I have a couple beers with me. I got my coffee next to me, and I'm ready to get this thing rolling. So let's get it going, Tori.
All right, then. So, for this philosophic cost, it's time for to make hurt on your noggin. Because our main anime for the cast is Serial Experiements Lain. That was a suggestion by the community, because I guess they want to hear us argue and possibly kill each other over the internet, because, that is fun, right? People killing each other? Yeah, this is really the time for that. But before that, suggested by quite a few listeners, is what is a proper way to rate anime? Because, obviously, we got it figured out when it comes to rating anime. Like, we are experts. Myself, of course, being the best at it.
Us,
so yeah,
the worldwide weebs,
yeah,
of course.
Well, I am the best. So we are
Available
going
on Podbean.
So we're going to tell you how to rate anime, how to rate the anime you watch, and from scale to personal feelings to genres and more, and of course, why I am correct and everybody else is wrong.
That's a bunch of shit, Tori. You have Arya as a 10.
Yeah, that's because it's a 10.
It
Out
has
of a
its own
possible
Kickstarter, right?
Future Diary is a 10. Like,
That is because it's a
That's
10.
Out of 100.
No, it's not.
Even Hickey's voice is cracking. This is going to be a fucking disaster.
No, perfect. Oh.
So would it be out of realm to just say, Joe, could you make a new symbol with just the maple leaf now upside down for the symbol?
No, but what we're going to do, right, is we're gonna make the Stars and Bars cast, right? It's just going to be like Texas's flag. Actually, I guess it's going to be more like Puerto Rico's flag.
What about an upside down leaf with stars and bars in it?
There you go.
How about that?
It's going to be the American flag, but with maple leaves upside down for all the stars.
There you go.
We're just going to
We'll
use
figure
Rhode
something
Island's
out.
Hope fucking anchor flag. We're going to use Denmark's flag for Tori.
I was about to say, I feel like you're forgetting that there are Norwegians and Brazilians in here.
We need to get whiskey on this podcast. We need to maintain a Canadian.
We do. Then we can still be the Red Leaf.
Well,
Retrocast.
on the video game side, there's still one Canadian left.
Good.
Do I look like I play video games?
Yes.
Well, you just said you've been playing
Shut
video games.
Don't throw facts at me like that, you bitch.
Oh, right. We're about to talk about Lane. Who needs facts?
Alternative facts all the way. Yeah. Speaking of alternative
You are
facts,
fake news.
Speaking of alternative facts, JD, you have something to do.
Oh, you're right. So, our usual shout out to Meowth900 and the Something Something Anime Podcast, found on SoundCloud, iTunes, and more. And it's free, by the way. Do you believe that?
No.
A free podcast. So if you want to chill time where a couple people hang out and talk about all the weeb shit they've been up to, definitely check them out. But I must say, Meowth900 is definitely losing points in my book, because she's liking Recreators, which means finally found something to disagree on, meaning that she's wrong, of course.
Yeah.
So, Tori, how badly did Recreators break you yesterday?
Well, for those that were in voice chat with me when me and JD was watching Recreators, that would basically be everybody that's here now. You will realize that by the end of Recreators, I was screaming at the top of my lungs because I was angry, and I haven't been this angry since I watched Manga Sensei. So it's not that long ago, but
But before that...
But before that, it was Handshakers. It's still not that long ago.
God damn it, Tori.
The
Get
point
better
is...
taste.
The point is, okay? Well, I think I have pretty good taste, but the point is, something happened, and I'm not gonna go into. I'm not gonna spoil Recreators for somebody that might want to watch it and maybe they enjoy it for God knows what reason. But something happened that I basically had predicted, but by the way they went about it when it actually happened, I used to think that the show was bad, but like it was at around like a 3, going back between a 3 and a 4, kind of that area. But when that thing happened, I just started screaming, and I was like, "No, fuck this show too." That was just, I lost it.
That's about how I reacted when I was watching Kato. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was...
I was laughing because the writing is atrociously bad and obvious.
Let's just ground this entire series in reality, and then the last episode, you know what? Fuck it. We're just gonna do whatever.
Magic!
Yay!
Yeah, I'm not catching up to
It's one of the most plot-convenient shows I've ever seen in my life.
No way. No shit, Sherlock. I mean, I'm not catching up, but I mean... They resurrected, like, a lot of people.
Recreators hurts. It hurts.
It does.
It's the kind of show... I haven't been this passionate in describing a show in a long time and talking about it because it's so popular and I just can't figure out why. Like, if anyone has seen anime longer than 12 shows, how do you not... Like, I could see an 8-year-old... If an 8-year-old came up to me and goes, "I love Recreators," I'd be like, "Okay, cool, you're 8." But once you hit puberty, you need to grow some thoughts and come at me, talk to me, hit me up on Twitter, and tell me why you like Recreators, because I don't know anymore.
But JD, come on now.
It seems like a solid concept that just kind of fell apart. Now, granted, I dropped this shit at episode 6 because I was just so tired of exposition in cafes with them eating. But it seems like it was just a whole lot of nothing that was going on.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't exactly sit well for something that actually billed itself as an action series. And I mean, one of the main villain's power is the power of shitposting. Like, how do you fucking not make that interesting?
I mean, her power is essentially just to do whatever she feels like. She doesn't have a limit.
Her power is actual shitposting.
Yeah. It's like you throw your attack at her, or your argument at her, and she's like, "Yeah, but no though," and then reverse it on you, and then you lose because I win. I shit posted. Get fucked.
Yeah, but exactly. Like,
it's like it's essentially like remember when you were kids, right? And you were playing whatever with that one kid who, no matter what you did, he would always just go, "Yeah, but I reversed that. You lose."
No. I got an even bigger analogy. The show is like when you and your friends would just make up a game. Let's call this tag. And let's call the game tag, but the only way you're safe is if you're touching the bush. So your friend's about to tag you. You go and touch the bush, and then all of a sudden he tags you and he goes, "Well, the green bushes don't count. You have to touch the red bushes because it's fall." They just make up a rule out of nowhere, and that's my definition of Recreators.
Nah, I still like the one where it's just like essentially they fucking reverse everything, like, because that is literally her ability has literally, like, the main villain's ability has literally devolved into anything you throw at me, I will turn it back on you. There's another character in the show who has that exact ability. No, there's 2.
It sounds like
or 3, or 4, or whoever.
Yeah.
This is just like a shitty version of Othello. Reverse-y, is
it's
that what people call it?
Yeah. Well, when people have asked me and Tori, why are we continuing to watch the show? Why not just drop it?
It's almost over now.
Well, for Tori, it's almost over. For me, I like watching what's popular and being a part of the conversation. Is that so wrong?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I'm the opposite of that, but no, I understand your point.
Yeah. I mean, I have dropped plenty of shows, but there are some shows I continue to watch to be a part of the community. And just because I don't like something doesn't mean you don't have to agree with me. I just want to be a part of that conversation of of a show or shows in general.
But I mean,
and hell, I watch one of the most popular anime of all time, and that's One Piece.
yeah, you're a weeb. Anyways, like what I watch,
So-
I watch recreators because like the way I keep seeing people talk about how good it is, so I kind of keep having this incentive to watch it to just kind of like see. I'm always just waiting for that moment where the anime does something, and I just go, okay, I see now. Now I see I understand what people see in their show, or, oh, I like that they did that, or whatever. And that's kind of why I'm holding out for recreates, and I'm giving it so many more opportunities than I would any other show, but that also, in turn, can make the show into what it is now for me, where I'm just so sick of it, and yeah.
No, Tori, you and I had a conversation yesterday while watching it. The best episode has been the recap episode.
Oh, yeah.
I don't understand how that's possible.
No, I understand what's possible, because Meteora, she became hot, and then she defeated Altair in the end. That would have been a perfect ending.
Don't put it past the anime. That could actually be the ending.
I would appreciate that ending.
Everything's null and void.
I like the proposed ending from Tori yesterday. Just walks up and main villain stabs main character. The end.
Yeah.
She wins.
Yeah.
You could have saved her. That's it.
That was kind of what I said too. I just hope she stabs him and just.
Yeah.
And he's not even the main character because he's hardly in the show.
He is the main character, though.
He just kind of shows up.
He is the main character.
There is no main character in the
he
show.
is the main
There
character.
is no main character.
He is the
in
main
the
character.
The
He is the
What is
self-insert
his name?
JD
Yeah.
God.
He is you, JD.
Shota. Is it Shota?
I don't
Tell
know.
me
I
his
don't
name
care.
is Shota,
Remember his
please.
name.
Oh my God, tell me his name is Shota.
I don't know. I don't
Oh
care.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, so I think we should have the rant be over now.
No.
And Hickey, we have your summer anime season thing going on. You're 30 episodes behind. Please update us.
Yeah. It happened what I didn't want to happen, which is I fall behind hard. I had a problem with my internet provider. Took a while, like 2 weeks to be over, and I
Did a
have new
hurricane
internet
hit your
now,
part
but
of
still-
Brazil?
No, there are no hurricanes here. I'm not hit by hurricanes anyway. So I was watching anime like using my college Wi-Fi. That was the only way I could watch anime. Problem is I'm way behind, and if I was watching 26 series like I usually watch, it will be fine to go and catch up with them. The problem is there's so many episodes to watch that when I watch an episode, the new episode of the same show is coming out the same day. I'm 2 episodes behind of Recreators, for example. I'm 2 episodes behind of a bunch of shows, and I don't have time because I need to start studying for my finals. It's becoming a snowball, and at the end I can't watch shows. I can either watch shows and I can't study because I'm thinking of watching shows. I'm getting too bored and it's slowly consuming me. That's basically my update. I hope I don't go crazy.
Any shows standing out for you in the last couple weeks that you have been able to watch? Because you've been you and the community have been trying to get me to watch Gurui or whatever the
Yeah,
really
Mahojin
shitty
Guruguru.
RPG show or something.
Yes. It's very good. Okay, it's fairly good. It has the RPG tropes we are used to just seeing anime, but it's kind of fresh. It has some newer ones I've never seen. Like whenever they make a close up on a character, it shows the pixels. So the show is basically made in like 16 bit.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's pretty interesting. I think it's if you used to play JRPGs the casual way when you're a child, you'll find the show very interesting. Because every single time someone is doing something interesting and something important, the hero is just doing nothing and being goofy at the side, just like. Well, usually when I play JRPGs when I was a child, I'll do dumb shit and fuck the quest. I don't care about the story. I just want to go and do all the dumb shit. And that's basically what it says. I think the most used describing piece is like, here is doing nothing. He's usually doing something dumb at the side. It's very interesting. The monsters are interesting. The characters are interesting. And I think you really should watch as someone who plays retro games.
Maybe if I have the
When it's over.
time.
Well, you have nothing but time
Yeah,
now,
sure.
homeboy.
No, I mean, I just
by
have
the
to
way,
leave a country. I mean, that's nothing to do, right?
Yeah, give all your shit
By
to a
the
movie
way-
company and let them bring it here.
Yeah,
by the
the
way,
whole
this is
movie process
a
is gonna
old
hurt
show,
my head.
okay?
Yeah.
JD, this is an old show. You know, there's an older show. And it's prior 2000, so if you're listening to that and want JD to watch Mahojin Guru Guru, just go and suggest it.
Don't do this to us, you bitch.
No, no,
Oh
no,
boy.
no.
yes,
no.
yes.
Jotaro Kujo. Gotta cite your sources.
You got
You're
it.
gonna do the aura thing? Well, I've been watching not a lot from this season anyway. So, gamers I just caught up with like a half hour ago. They finally fucking talked, everybody. Be still my beating heart. They finally decided to just talk it out.
I told you. I fucking told
It was
you.
amazing.
I
Tori,
know.
you were totally right.
I
They
know.
decided to talk like adults.
I also love when
But
they're
they're not
playing.
adults.
That
I also
boredom.
love it though when they're playing the game of life and it's just like so fucking correct on everything. It's painful.
Of course it is.
Yeah, every single time is it spot on.
Pink hair, best grill, fight me.
No one's gonna
Come
fright
play
you.
the game of life of JD's summer 2017.
Get fired.
I don't
Experience
wanna get
Hurricane.
fucked, thank you.
Get robbed of
Sorry, I'm not.
35,000.
35,000, please.
I mean, you guys can't imagine how much beer I've had on the beach.
I'll bet
Just
you
trying
I
to
could.
forget about the summer. The only positive thought I had was I have my video games and I have Kakaguri to watch someone get fucked up.
Ooh, dirty.
Yeah. Ooh.
See someone who has a worse.
Here
shitty
I was
life
even
and
in a
you guess.
casino thinking like, can we raise the stakes? It's not like I have much left to lose.
Anybody down for Russian roulette? Anyone? No?
I'm so alive!
I'm down. I'm down.
I need.
Yes.
I just need to go to the bathroom. I really got a good hand. Oh boy.
So,
So,
JD,
Hickey,
do we have
we-
some questions?
Yeah, Hickey, we have some questions that you need to read and and
Yeah,
ask.
we do. Yeah. Before that, I just want to say to you, listener, and I don't know if you noticed that, but I'm the disposable guy here. And when JD showed us the outline for the podcast, I wasn't supposed to say anything. And before we start, he said he can do the questions. I don't fucking care. So fuck you, JD. Now for the first question, we have a question. I think it was for Semiboat because JD forgot you put who asked which question.
Yeah, JD.
What band would you like to see do more
Semi
songs
is the
for
first
openings,
three,
endings,
I
or
is-
insert songs? Fuck you, JD. I'm reading. God fucking damn it.
So angry.
Yeah, I'm fairly angry right now. What band would you like to see do more songs for openings, endings, or insert songs? Well, if it was some months ago, I would say Sayuri and Daoko. But now there's this band. They're doing the first collaboration with anime, which is Orange Post Reason. They did the ED for Kombini Kareshi. It's a very good song. They are a very good band. There's also Ore-sama, which is a singer. She made the opening for Mahojin Guru Guru and last season Alice Tuzoroku. And I think she has a nice voice. It's a very distinguished voice.
All right, I want to see I want to see Beat Crusaders. They did all the music for Beck, so they did one of the OPs for Bleach. It was the one during the Bount arc, so the best OP went to the shittiest arc. And and the other band I want to see do more of everything is Bada. They did Chase in Part 4 of JoJo's, which was the middle OP. And I think they're really underrated, even within those OPs from JoJo's.
Yeah. For me, I have 3 alternatives for this. I would like to see more. I always like to hear more Maya Sakamoto. I love her voice. I love her songs. Other than that, I really like Daoko, so I could definitely go with more from her. And Sim, the ones that did the Rage of Bahamut openings. I really like them.
I'm quite fond of California and Bump of Chicken. It's a pretty simplistic answer for me.
Yeah.
If the OP's good, it's all right. I'm not really a big music guy.
Just for everyone who's barely paying attention, just run through the artist names again. Hickey.
Sayuri, Daoko, Orange Post Risen, and Ore-sama.
And then I was Beat Crusaders and Bada, Tori.
I was, Maya Sakamoto, Daoko, and Sim.
And
California Bump of Chicken.
there we go.
Hickey, next question.
Okay, next question. What anime would you say has the best use of CG?
Now, just right away. I know this is a question by Semi-Bolt. And I just immediately want to say, Semi, most animated, actually all animated, use a CG. To varying degrees, really. But CG is present in basically all anime. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that you mean best full CG. A show that is full CG. To which I'd have to say, I really like Blame. Polygon Pictures does good work.
You bastard. You knew.
There's only one.
You knew for
there's
damn
only
sure.
one answer. There's only one answer. Berserk.
Can't even take it seriously.
Best use of CG. Well, this season we have Night and Magic. The CG is actually fairly good. Use of CG, I think it's Shirobako, except for the cars. If you didn't notice, every single office background was in CG, was done in CG.
Yep.
And you need to pay attention to see that, because the elements in the background that caught your attention are usually clothing pieces on the desk and on the chairs, and those chairs and those desks that have like bright colors, they are 2D, but the rest of the scene is 3D. Every single object is CGI. So I think it's great. I think it's a very good use of CG. Instead of doing weird crowds with CG, just do objects, pull the attention of the viewer to the 2D objects you throw in the middle, and I think you're good to go.
So I'm going to take this question and do something different with it.
Skipping JD, okay.
So, I mean, the easy answer could be what Tori says, like basically anything from Polygon and Blame.
No. That's not what I said.
But when I hear the best use of CG, I think of like memorable moments. So definitely not, say, the initial D cars.
What do you mean?
They're very memorable, but the moments they're using them is like, oh, okay, 90s.
PlayStation 1.
Yeah, exactly.
Gran Turismo.
There are two anime that come to mind, in my opinion, the best use of CG that I've seen. And one would be the CG used in Macross Plus in the early 90s, with the way they use a lot of the lights and mech animations. Very cool. I thought it was brilliantly done, especially for the time. Excellent. But I think the moment I started appreciating CG and how it was used is the way it was used in the movie Be Forever Yamato in the early 80s. There's a moment where they're coming out of hyperspace and they come across a planet and they see what's around them, and it's all in CG. And just coming from the time, it looked like it was 30 years ahead. It was just outstanding to see. It made the movie that much better, and that's the best use of CG in my opinion. Was what Be Forever Yamato did, and I haven't seen anything used in that way, CG used in that way ever since.
Okay, since Tori totally stole my answer with Blame, I'm gonna have to go off the beaten path and say all the effects in the Gundam series. So, Thunderbolt's particle effects, the lasers.
Ooh, Thunderbolt's good.
Stuff like that. That's going
right.
to be my best use of CG. Because it actually adds impact without having to put in impact frames and all that shit.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Joe, on that. With how great Thunderbolt uses CG and the particle effects. You're right. Oh my god.
Most of that was that was drawn. So don't get it twisted that it's
Really?
computer generated. Most of that was drawn.
Wow, I had no idea.
That's why it took so long to release.
I mean, that makes more
So
sense.
the CG is just you put a little more of
It's
weight on the scene.
exactly. It's like remember K Return of Kings and K the K series.
Nope.
You know
how terrible it is?
You know how
Yeah, I
they
remember.
totally overdid every single fucking particle effect they possibly could.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well,
it was unwatchable.
That's all post processing. So
And that is something that Gohans is
Sunrise
famous
just
for.
did it, Sunrise just did it, tastefully and not like fucking hot trash.
Gohans is famous for their terrible post processing. You can see it in other stuff as well, such as Marduk Scramble. Like oh god, the grain they put on that, it is
Hand
so
holders.
awful. Oh.
Which is terrible because that story is pretty solid.
Yeah, hand holders as well. That is probably the worst example because that was so bad that it actually affected the show. The way it looked.
Speaking of Gundam particle
Those
effects, you should really watch Build Fighters Try. Sejun Park is doing amazing work in that right now.
Oh yeah.
Look,
It's
since you're
fucking
talking about
insane.
particles, does what is the name?
UFO table.
UFO table. Yeah, Digital Works count as CG.
Wait, what?
UFO table has its own CG division.
Yeah.
They do.
No, I know, but they have the CG division and they have the Digital Works.
Yes. And that's most of their
Does
backgrounds
the
are CG.
Digital Works?
Like
Yeah, but like the effects and particles, they are kind of. I don't know if they qualify as CG.
They do. They are CG.
I don't know.
They're-
It's a gray area.
they're
so let's
computer generated,
that.
so
They
I
are
mean,
computer generated. A lot of what Ufotable does is computer generated. They use CG in basically everything.
Okay.
It's like even the movement in Ufotable productions are very often like enhanced with CG to make sure that the signs like none of the characters go off model. They try to make them stay as like consistent as possible. So Ufotable uses CG quite a lot in basically every stage of the anime, of making the anime.
well, speaking of odd particles and weird shit with characters, how's that third question looking?
Third question.
Question number 3.
Do
Also
you like
by
or hate when anime has colored out? Fuck you, JD! Come on! It's the second time.
Every
Do you
time.
like or hate? JD.
I'm not
Stop.
doing it on purpose. I'm not.
Stop.
Okay, go.
Seriously, stop. Just shut up, okay? Do you like or hate? Oh god, fucking. Do you like or hate it when anime has colored out lines like "No Game No Life" or "Flying Wage OP"? I don't like or just like. I'm neutral.
I am the opposite. I have no preference for either of those. I love it when they have odd outlines. For instance, Saikano does that all the time. All their outlines are off color for the main characters. I think it's a good way to differentiate the main cast from just background characters.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, it looked kind of creative.
I agree with Joe. I'm a big fan of that. I really like it when they use different color outlines. I don't know why.
Agreed.
Oh, good, you didn't cut Hickey off. Awesome.
You can talk now, JD. Yeah, you can talk now, JD. Please state your opinion.
No, I agree. That's fine.
Okay, except for like white outlines, right? because you were bitching
Well, I
about
don't
it.
like outlines that blend into the background, but if you have like a vibrant outline, just so you can differentiate the cast. Because if everyone has one, it's distracting. But if, like, your main 3 characters have, like, a red or a lime green or whatever outline, you know who your main cast is. Even from the back, from the front, you know who you have to pay attention to. So it's just a good way to kind of push the narrative properly.
Yep.
Or at least make it that little bit easier.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Next question. I know this one is for Naya, our friend over the Discord. What is the weirdest thing you've ever eaten? Anyone?
I've had crickets fried. I've had mealworms fried. Insects, I guess. I've had rabbit
Octopus
and stew.
embryos.
Octopus is delicious, and I don't give a shit what you say.
No, like the baby octopus embryos. Raw.
Oh, okay.
Okay, raw is weird.
Yeah, embryos are. Yeah.
They like they feel like a little fruit snack or a gummy bear, and when you put them in your mouth, they're chewy, but then they pop. It's very strange to describe.
Kind of like calamari.
No. Calamari doesn't quite have that same pop, and then you taste all the fluids and everything coming out.
You do if you have the good calamari. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, I've had calamari raw, and I've had it fried, and it doesn't compare to baby octopus embryos.
I'm in to try it.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely worth a try. Sea urchin is also really weird to eat, just because it feels like you're putting a tongue on your tongue.
Isn't that basically paste? Isn't that basically paste though? Like it's mostly made for, or you mostly make it for sushi, don't you?
Well, you don't make it for sushi. You can get sea urchin just by itself, and it's like this, or it looks like this orange pasty thing, but it's semi-solid, and then when you put it on your tongue, it feels like you have another tongue on it. It's really odd.
That is strange. Also down to try it.
Well, when I move to Rhode Island, we'll go to plenty of sushi places.
We can go to the one 2 minutes from my house. Don't worry.
Does it have sea urchin?
Fucking probably. The guy behind the sushi counter doesn't even speak English.
Nice.
It's a good start.
Yeah, it's a really good start. It's a really good way. When you have to point at the menu, you know it's going to be some good shit.
Tori?
What about you, Tori?
I wanted to go last because, quite frankly, I don't really eat weird things. I eat food. Stuff that's labeled food,
Okay.
and, yeah.
Look at this little punk ass. Never tried anything weird.
I haven't really had the opportunity to try anything weird.
You ever had like reindeer or something most people
I-
would find weird?
I have had reindeer, but I didn't think people would find it weird. But okay, sure.
Reindeer's delicious, but yeah.
So is moose.
Moose is delicious, but those things are fucking assholes, dude. Fucking moosing.
Meese.
Yeah.
Goddamn meese.
I ate a cricket once. It was mixed in my salad. I didn't realize it and went in. I was like, what a strange feeling. This lettuce has this really strange taste. But anyway, I wouldn't say weirdest, but I think it's exotic because I don't know. I ate a lot of Brazilian animals. I like capybara. I think it's delicious. My family don't agree with me, but I still think it's very chewy. It has a strong taste and a strong smell.
Now, is that like a large rodent, or
I've
is it
eaten-
more like a canine?
It's a large rodent.
Okay.
It's a very large rodent. You see a lot in anime, and see, I don't know why Japanese are so into giant rats that the only thing they do is reproduce and give me food. I've eaten armadillo. It's illegal, by the way. Don't try. I was a kid. I couldn't realize that. I had alligator once.
Alligator's good.
Alligator is good.
You guys
It
ever had
tastes like
cat or dog?
A weird.
Nope.
It's not bad.
No cat or dog.
It's not bad. I thought it'd be way worse than it was.
Frogs.
Frogs are delicious.
Frogs. I've eaten frogs. Yes, it is. when I went to a Japanese place in another state. Where I think it was a Vietnamese or something like kind of like that. Another Asian people selling that kind of stuff. I don't think it was a Japanese. It didn't look Japanese. They looked like more South Asia. But anyway, I think that covers
like
the
Vietnamese,
weirdest thing
Taiwanese,
I've ever
something like
eaten. Yeah.
Alright.
Or Laos, maybe? I don't know. Next question. Name a show that you feel has had a very negative response, but you would still recommend people watch.
Serial Experiments Lain.
Yeah. Real negative
Elfin
response
lead.
to that one.
Elfin Lead.
The lead. Yeah.
What was so negative about that? I thought it was hot shit when it
edgy.
came out.
It was, but now people hate it for what I think is no reason, because it's just as edgy as the shit people like now, but it's already been foreseen as edgy as hell, so now people are like, oh, it's too edgy for me. Woo."
Yep.
But it's still really just a gore fest, so I don't see why everyone bitches about it. Like, it put out exactly what it was from episode 1. Episode 1, you see people explode into blood pinatas, and it's just, oh my god, it's so edgy. I can't believe it did that. Most of the shit you watch is just the same gore porn, but because it's made in 2016, 2017, it's fine.
Yeah.
Tokyo Ghoul comes to mind on that.
Tokyo Ghoul had
bad.
good writing and then immediately fucking failed.
Tokyo Ghoul's bad, yeah.
But yeah, basically it's the same. It's the same premise though.
Someone's passionate.
Yeah.
I don't like Tokyo Ghoul. Like, I liked it a lot, and then it just kind of turned into fucking garbage.
Yep.
But back on track. I guess Tokyo Ghoul is a good thing to kind of compare it to, because Tokyo Ghoul is a gore fest with basically no story, and everyone's gonna get mad at me because I said that. But come on, be honest with yourself. Where's the story in Tokyo Ghoul? Where's the
Yeah,
story?
it kind of disappeared, didn't it?
Where's the story in Elfin Lead? It's the same. It's just a really, really sad experiment that kind of just went off the rails and got super mean.
Yeah.
They're the same story. One's just, 10, 15 years older.
Yep. For me, negative response, I still recommend
Oh, and
people.
Lucy's way hotter.
True. But the thing I would recommend, I recommend a pretty recent show, actually. I'd recommend people try out Classroom Crisis. People hated that show. I don't really understand why. Was it super fun or very good? No, I don't really think so. It was interesting. I think it fell apart a bit at the end, but up until, for a while, I thought it was a decently solid show. Present some interesting ideas. But usually, I don't know. I think people generally take issue with the whole, oh, high schoolers, working, huh? Yeah. Fucking cliche. It's like, they're...
Motherfucker, I worked when I was in junior high.
Yeah, I know, but people don't seem to like that. I don't know. I don't know why people seem to have so much hatred towards Classroom Crisis. It was pretty much hated on before it started airing. So I'm like,
I feel like it's one of those things where one big person said they didn't like it and everyone kind of followed suit.
yeah, but that happened before the anime had even put out a PV or anything. It was just, oh, Classroom Crisis, that seems awful. And everybody's like, yeah, it's awful. It's like, it's not even out.
I remember that happened.
Chill.
Well, to go ahead and I think I'm going to make everyone mad again. But if everyone remembers when Shirobako came out and not many people were talking about it, and then the ANN cast said how good it was, and then all of a sudden it exploded in popularity, kind of like the same fucking feeling I'm getting.
Yeah, except Shirobako was good.
Yeah, no,
Except
but
Shirobako.
yeah, okay, that's fine. No,
Yes.
everyone go watch
I couldn't think of
Bakuman.
anything. Yay! I couldn't think of anything. I did not see Classroom Crisis coming. I would say Ninja Slayer from animation, but I think I'm the only person in the earth that likes that
Well, you're
show.
wrong.
Oh,
Possibly
so
because...
they call yourself the
Possibly
Ninja Slayer.
because... yeah, Ninja Slayer is very
I
cool.
like Ninja Slayer.
Especially
I like Inferno
because
Cop.
I like old Japanese movies about ninjas and samurais, so I got a lot of the reference they did. Unfortunately, people were not into black and white movies that much.
Oh, was it beer time?
Anyway,
It's the second one, actually.
yeah, that was
Um,
okay. That covers up the questions we had for this podcast.
no, we have one more
Now I
actually.
want to- We have
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
more.
Looks like
And I didn't get to answer the last one.
I don't
Payback,
care about you. You don't care
bitch.
about me. Go fuck you.
Sorry, Hickey. I didn't mean to.
Yeah.
in the
Whatever.
immortal words of friend of the podcast, Skeeth,
I'm not mean, you know. I'm not sad.
eat shit, bitch.
Hickey, I was almost in South America.
Almost.
Almost.
But yeah, okay.
Well, you said you're gonna visit me like in 2 years or something, but
You
anyway,
said you were gonna visit me.
I'm gonna hold my grudge and punch you when you're here.
Anyways, JD, why don't you answer the question?
Yeah, I'm very fond of Blast of Tempest. It got a very negative response because of the whole mystery reveal.
Did it really?
Yeah.
I like that
It
show.
did. I liked it too, and I do recommend people to watch if you like a bit of mystery. But I don't know where all the hate came from with the reveal. I thought it made sense to what the story was going for.
How could it have had hate? Isn't it based off of a fucking Shakespeare work?
I don't know.
Vaguely, yes.
All I've heard.
Well, I mean, yeah, but it's based off of Tempest. Like the story beats are very similar.
Yeah, no, but
Yeah.
the thing is, like, I mean, I haven't seen the show. I plan to watch the show at some point, but I haven't seen it yet. But pretty much ever since I like saw footage from that show and I got interested in it, all I've heard people talk about say from that show since is how terrible it, like how badly it fell apart and just how shitty it became.
It wasn't that bad.
I don't see it, honestly.
I didn't roll my eyes until the next dimension.
You clearly have bad
It
taste
wasn't,
then.
It wasn't recreators breaking.
At least. Please, Tori, as you were saying.
I said you clearly have bad taste then.
Yeah, that's why we agree on 58% of things.
Yep.
Okay, well then, Whiskey popped in a question at the last minute. So, his question was, what is a show you think is good that most people overrate, and why do you think it's overrated?
JoJo's!
Did you hear that, everyone? Tori
yeah.
thinks JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is good.
I think it is. Yeah, I do actually. I think it's okay, and I think it has moments where it is really good. I'm not a big fan of JoJo's, which is kind of weird because I feel JoJo's is a show that I thought I would enjoy a lot more than I did, but I don't. Why I think it's overrated? Well, I mean, I've talked to a lot of JoJo's fans, and apart from all the JoJo's and the goddamn, is that a JoJo's reference I hear everywhere? Yeah, is that and you know the obvious? You were expecting an answer, but it was me, Dio. And I exactly, and that is all I see. And I watch the show, and I'm sitting there, and I'm picking up on references to popular music of past and present, and I'm sitting there getting all this, and I talk to people about it, and all I get in return is what? Huh? The who?
You did not get that from me. Don't give me that shit.
No, not from you. But I'm talking about when I don't talk to you people. I'm talking about when I talk to other people outside of our Discord. All I hear is, I didn't get that, or I don't understand. What are you talking about? It's just a cool shonen where people punch each other. Go, oh no.
Who the hell is King Crimson? Excuse me, what? Why are you watching this show?
Why do you like this show? Not even why are you watching it?
Who's Crazy Diamond? You mean who's Pink Floyd and what is Shine On You Crazy Diamond? Is that what you mean? No, who's Crazy Diamond? Oh my god.
Yep.
Oh my god.
That is why it's like, I understand why JoJo's would become popular. I'm just shocked by the amount of people that seems to like it as much as they do, when they clearly miss about half the show. It's like, huh. So yeah.
Well, since IU in our Discord threw the stipulation on it earlier that we have to think it's good and something that people wouldn't expect, I'm going to go ahead and say the Fate series is vastly overrated. I love Fate. I really do. But I do not think it is God's gift, and I love that beer sound. Good job, guys. I really do not think that it's as good as people are saying it is, especially Apocrypha, which is just kind of fine. And Unlimited Blade Works, it looked pretty, don't get me wrong, but the story was kind of garbage. The story was kind of just boring nothing. I mean, Fate Zero was written by The Butcher, and it deserves a lot of the praise it gets, but it shouldn't be heralded as, the second coming of anime. Christ, because it's just not. It's kind of generic. You see a lot of what's going to happen coming, with the exception of the ending, which I'm not going to spoil. That being said, I still love Fate. I would still suggest anyone watch it, but don't sit there and try to sell me on the fact that it's God's gift to anime.
Well, there you go.
But
Well-
it is.
I don't see Ava anywhere in that title.
Fade Ava.
No, that's the first
Fade
coming.
Ava.
You know,
Second impact is Rosafon, and the third impact hasn't come yet.
We're getting there.
you're still waiting those movies to finish,
Go, go,
right?
go, 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 go.
That question was way late. Well, let's see. I think Gatchaman Crowns. I think it's a good anime, but it's not for me, and I didn't realize a lot of people would like that show. I think it's good. I gave it a nice score. I think it's good. The payoff of the first season is worth it. But still, I thought that show would have way less people following than what he actually has. There's also Love Live, but that's
It's no Idol
Love
Master.
Live has a lot of fun, a lot of fans. But still, it's the same
It's
thing.
no Idol Master.
I
Don't
think
toss
it's
me
good.
that
I
shit.
think I am an Idol Master fan, but still, I think Love Live is good. At least the first season
Go out to
of the
fun.
first group. And there's a lot of people. This thing is the second come of Christ in Japan.
So when did the Love Live girls sing?
it's very interesting. It's a very interesting thing that
When did
happened.
the Love Live girls sing "Knights of Sidonia"?
Don't know.
Never.
I'll explain it to you later, JD. Don't worry. I'll give you head pats.
Okay. So I got three here, three anime here that I think are good. They're actually good, but they are highly overrated. First that comes to mind is Gintama.
Good.
People absolutely adore that show. It's not the greatest comedy of all time. It's funny. I do like it, but you need to have had consumed a bunch of anime prior to get a lot of the references.
Not even just anime. You need to have absorbed a lot of Japanese culture. Period. So tokusatsu shows, J dramas, like the whole thing. You need to understand their idol industry.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. You got I mean, I just watched just throwing out my my Shonen Quest update. I was watching Gintama on my vacation, and there was a whole episode in comedic fashion dedicated to beetle hunting.
Oh, so Pokemon.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
well, if you don't understand the whole Japanese culture behind their obsession with beetle hunting and fighting the beetles, then you just wouldn't really get the humor at all and why they're doing it. The second anime is Steins Gate, which, Joe, you actually don't like that, right?
I do not at all.
Yeah.
Well, time travel tends to break immersion for me on most series, so it's not really shocking that I don't like it. Also, your main character is a piece of shit, and if you can't see that, then I don't know what to tell you.
Well, who cares?
I do.
There are many characters that are pieces of shit in shows, and you can still
Yeah, but they're not.
enjoy their character.
Yeah, but they're not portrayed as the good guy. You know, like people who are pieces of shit in anime are usually kind of put forth as they're a scumbag, and he's not. He's a piece of shit, and he's still portrayed as I'm doing the right thing.
Well, I mean, it's from his perspective.
Yep.
And isn't his perspective what he thinks is doing? Anyways, yeah, I mean, when half the series is a slow pull, and most people drop it at that point, it's automatically overrated. It is not the greatest time travel show I've seen, but it is. I do think it's really good, and it's. I mean, just from Joe's opinion, right there, yeah, it's overrated. The most overrated show that I think is good is Natsume's Book of Friends. I've seen, I think at this point, 5 or 6 seasons, because it all kind of blends together at this point, and it has, on my anime list, an average score of the series altogether is anywhere from between an 8 and a 10.
Wow.
And I can honestly say you could watch half of the first season and then any episode after that, and you wouldn't miss really anything at all. It's very episodic, and for an episodic anime to be rated that high, it's... I mean, Tori, you were talking about how Cowboy Bebop is overrated.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
episodic anime being rated so high is hard to do, and to me, Natsume's Book of Friends doesn't do enough for a cohesive story to keep a viewer interested. I mean, don't get me wrong, it has a very dedicated audience at this point, but if you watch the first season, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about with how overrated the show is.
I'll get back to you now when I actually watch it. And just to comment on that, what JD said, I do think Cowboy Bebop is overrated. I absolutely love that show. It's the first show I watched, and I think it is fantastic. But to quote MODC, Cowboy Bebop's overrated. No shit when it's an 11.
Demo D's nuts, my dude.
Oh, I can't believe you did that.
I mean, it's true.
Anyway, coming out of what JD said, I think it's good to mention Hellgirl as well. It's a show that I like, a lot of people like, but it's the same thing. It's episodic. If you see the first episode of the first season and like watch the 4th season now that is coming out, it's the same. And I think it's kind of overrated. I don't think there's a need for a new season of Hellgirl. People enjoy it. I enjoy it. Still, I would recommend to watch the first season.
I don't enjoy it.
The 3rd season, and that's it. No, the 2nd season is actually pretty good. Like the 1st and the 2nd season, watch like half of the 1st season, escape to the later half of the 2nd season, and you're good to go.
If you watch
Basically just a lot of
Hellgirl,
filler.
if you like Hellgirl, do you like watching the same scene over and over and over and over
Over
and
and
over
over
and over
again?
That is Hellgirl.
Yes.
Yep.
Pretty much. But it's
So-
interesting.
He
Sometimes.
says open air to the guy who's seen Ava 60-something times.
Well, at least they have many scenes.
I'm sure
you
it's
can
different
see
every
again.
time when you go crazy.
Yeah, at least you have many scenes you can see again. In Hellgirls, you kind of have this one sequence that they keep playing over and
Okay,
over
that's
and
fucking
over
fair.
and over again every single episode. It's like they don't even try to change it up. You see the exact same goddamn animation and sequence every time. You're just sitting there with your head
And
in
it's
your
the
hands
same
like,
format.
Oh my god, stop.
Please, step, please, God.
Yeah, and that's a problem because every single season has like 26 episodes, and you only need 5 to understand what's going on because usually shit goes down in the later episodes. Like the last 5 episodes, shit goes down, and that's it. So I don't know, you need the first half, skip.
Alright, that makes sense.
But still, people like it, I like it, and I think you should watch at least the first season.
I hate it like I do.
At least give it a go.
So, Tori, you have a quest update.
I do have a quest update. And this is something I bring to everybody with a sad heart. The quest is... No, I'm joking. But we have hit a bit of a... well, not a problem per se, but the show I'm currently watching, which is Queen Millennia, has basically I finally hit that point where there is no more episodes. And I don't mean the show is over, because it's not over. There's still 8 more episodes to be watched. However, they have still not been subbed and is not available anywhere. Subbed. I could probably find them raw, but that won't help me. I don't speak Japanese. So, for the time being, until they release the last 8 episodes, the Queen Millennia will be on hold. which makes me sad because they're literally just now in the final climax, and I want to see what happens next because I like that show. So yeah,
Spoilers.
I know, right? But I on the Mal group, I did kind of write, the situation and kind of slowly started the review. And when every episode's out and I watched it, I will update that, and I will, of course, let people know in the podcast when that happens. So then you can go and read my full thoughts on it. And, other than that, kind of the same thing. I am watching, Space Cobra, Cat's Eye, and Fist of the North Star. And just to kind of have, well, not just to kind of, if this was planned from before, but I'm going to put up something else from 1981 as well on the review. So I'm assuming, I guess, tomorrow probably, I'll watch Sayonara Galaxy, Galaxy Express 39, or Adieu Galaxy Express 39, I guess is what it's called in English.
And you can find our Mal group by typing in Red Leaf Retrocast or WWWcast into the My Anime List club search.
Yes. So yeah.
Yeah, please join us. Tori's quest update is totally not stolen from me.
Never. I only do original
what
stuff.
you're talking about.
I only do original stuff. I totally didn't go in, look at what you wrote, copied everything, changed some things, and post that. Never.
But it's good. I'm glad you got during this quest. You got into the Leggy universe just as much as I did when I was doing my quest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
doing my
I
quest.
started Leggy universe before I started my quest because I watched Galaxy Express 39 on Joe's recommendation. So, I technically already peeked in, but now I find myself watching a lot more and being interested.
But now
in
you're
a lot
locked in. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got Queen Millennia, Yamato.
Oh yeah.
You're all set.
Queen Emeraldus.
Yep.
All you need is Captain Harlock in your life.
I'm getting there. Don't you worry about that. It's gonna happen at some point.
The manliest of men who drinks wine with aliens.
Is he really the manliest of man though? I'm watching Space Cobra. That guy's pretty manly.
I hear you're watching some Korean manga or web manhwa.
Am I watching manhwa? I didn't realize.
You are. Well, I mean, you see it with your eyes, so I guess
I
you're
do.
watching it, but you're reading it.
Yes, I am. Joe also got me to read Tower of God, so I've been slowly reading that every day when when I'm on my way to school. I read a couple of...
Slowly reading a dozen chapters.
Yep, slowly well, recently I've been slowly reading a dozen chapters. I liked it, and Joe always said that it gets better in season 2, and towards the end of season 1 I was basically hooked, so I was sitting there, I usually read about 4 or 5 chapters on my way to school, and all of a sudden I was sitting there reading up to 10 chapters, and I'm like, no, don't stop, I don't want to get off yet, I have one more chapter to read, please.
Rachel's a bitch.
She is.
Yeah.
I implore everyone.
Something we agree
Please,
on.
everyone,
Rachel's a bitch.
join my Discord and talk to me about Tower of God. I want to talk to you.
Or just join our Discord and don't talk to him about Tower of God and make him sad.
Or do it. I mean, hit me up on Twitter or Mal or wherever you can find me, and I will definitely drop you a link. I'm the only mod, so we'll see how it goes.
So that brings
I
us...
swear to you, I'm gonna finish it. Okay, I just don't have the time.
Yeah, law school is kind of busy. I feel you, man.
Yeah.
So that brings us to our main discussion now. You guys ready for this?
Yep.
Everyone got their beers?
Y'all ready
Nope.
for this?
No, not really.
Should I crack open beer number 3, or should I wait for the lane to start?
Crack open beer number 3. Du musst die dritte Bier haben, ja?
This guy.
This guy?
This guy. Speaking all German and shit.
There we
Tori,
go.
tell Joe he needs to have a third beer in Norwegian.
Joe, du trenger å åpne en ny øl. Øl nummer 3.
Boppity-bippity-boopity-bippity-boppity.
And the mustache has grown. All right, so for our Italian audience, Joe just totally spoke perfect Italian to you,
Say it with
And
your
saying
chest!
saying that we know how to rate anime. We know the best way to rate it, the only way to rate it, And I think the only way to start is the guy who doesn't believe in giving out 10s, which is a masterpiece level. Hickey.
I don't. Yeah, no, there's no such thing as an anime masterpiece. Well, start with I don't give ones nor tens. Not because I have a problem giving ones or tens. It's just that because I mainly use my anime list to score shows. And my anime list gives not only scores but kind of adjectives to the shows. And number 1 is appalling. Number 10 is masterpiece. I don't think there's a show that is truly appalling, and I don't think there's a show that is truly a masterpiece. So I don't give ones or tens, which leaves me with scores between 2 and 9.
Challenge accepted.
Basically, I mean, Isekai Smartphone might be my first one because I truly think that show is appalling. But anyway,
But you watched Arrow Manga
what I
Sensei.
do is, and I gave it a 2, yes,
Why not a 1?
because it moves.
It moves, alright.
It moves, okay, it moves. The director did a good job. I don't have any, but the story is just not
That
good.
one guy did such a good job.
Which brings me to which brings me to how I rate shows is basically I have 4 topics and I go through them, which is art, music, animation, and storytelling. Storytelling being story and characters. I go through them. Each one of them is 2 points. I go through them, and if I think the show has a very good storytelling, it wins a 2 on this matter, on this subject. If it has good music, and this go on. If I enjoy the show, and that is a problem. The problem is when I enjoy a show. I had a lot of problem rating shows when I start rating, because I will like a show and I'll give the show an awesome score, which it doesn't deserve, like Aria. I gave Aria a 9. I don't think it deserves a 9.
Yeah, it deserves a 10.
It deserves a 10! Yeah, fucking really waited for that one.
No. It deserves a 7 at best.
Yep.
Season
Maybe
1,
an 8.
baby!
The 2 that I gave it, yeah, that's what it deserves. You're right. Alright, continue, please.
Yeah. So what I did, what I start doing is that if I enjoy a show, I put +1 in the score, the final score. So the show is a 6, but I enjoyed it, so it becomes a 7. It's a way to quantify the subjectiveness of scoring shows, because scoring shows is subjective. It's not exact. What I think it's a 6, even though I go out of my way to mark down the points, the good points, the bad points, and come out with a score. Someone might think it's a 10, or someone might think it's a 2 or 1. So that's how I like to rate shows. I also like to rewatch shows and rescore them from time to time. That's something I do. I have a rewatch list on my anime list, which are shows without a score, where I remove the score because I wanted to rewatch them, and score them using my newest system of scoring. JD, what about you? How do you score shows?
So, I try my best to keep personal feelings out of it, but we all like what we like. What a statement!
Holy shit! How could you possibly think that?
Yeah.
Right. But I do my best to try and keep personal feelings out. There's always an exception to that rule where, say, a show hits you on such a personal level that it can't do any better than that, because you've related to it so much. In that sense, what comes to mind is March Comes In Like a Lion. It was so hard for me to not give it a 10, just on the fact of something along those lines. So I felt inclined where I have to give it a 9 in that sense. So in terms of scale, I use 1 to 10 because it's a very basic scale, and it's on my anime list, so it's easy to go with. And they have their names next to every number to kind of try to help the person out. when a show's anywhere from an 8 to a 10, it's definitely my recommendation range. And as Hickey says, that kind of +1 in enjoyment, your personal enjoyment, that's I go by a very similar thing. A show like Monster is a good example of what I think a masterpiece is, where I think the show could not do anything better. I personally could not find anything inherently wrong with the show, or the fact that I believe I could have done something different to make it better. To me, that was a masterpiece. Another one that comes to mind is 12 Kingdoms, kind of on a totally different scale to look at. The show doesn't finish. I don't hold an anime. I don't hold it against an anime for not finishing what it started. I don't find that fair because of the state of the industry.
Just how the industry works in general.
It's just how things. Yeah, it's just how things work in general. I'm looking at the product in front of me, in general, and of those episodes I saw, again, couldn't think of anything that could have been done better. Now, going to the other end of the scale, the 1, 2s, and 3s, the appalling, the terrible, the bad range. 1 would be kind of a shit watch, as Joe likes putting the phrase out lightly.
Yeah, I love me some shit watches.
To me, for a show to get a 1, it's more or less kind of in that Handshakers range where the show is unwatchable, you can't finish it, you have zero interest in anything, everything about it is bad. Like, when you think a first grader did it, that's a bad sign. And actually, I would go, but there are certain things that are so bad they're funny.
So bad it's good?
So bad it's good. Could that be a 1 or a 3? Sure, because you had a good time doing it. That's where that personal feelings come in. You know it's really bad.
But definitely not a 2. Never a 2.
But it's definitely not a 2. So for my rating system, if it gets a 2, it has done everything possible to fuck the anime up. The most recent show I've given a 2 was Kato, where it was something I truly enjoyed up until a point, and then it does something even worse after a point. For me to give a show a 2 is very rare, and to me that's actually worse than a 1, if that makes any sense to you guys.
Well,
Nope.
JD, I know you've heard me say this probably a good, 2-3 dozen times, but I would rather watch a 2 or a 1 than a 5.
So that's where I was heading next. Now where you get to the 4, 5, 6 range, this is where things get really tricky, because this is where most anime stands, in my opinion. A show that's below average, average, and above average. Something like Death Note I see as above average. Something like, let's say Air. The KyoAni show Air. I see that as just an average show that had an idea and it was an anime.
I don't know,
Was
man.
it bad?
Every,
No. Was it very good?
I think every key
Nah.
show deserves a 2. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm kind of going off the cuff here. Then there's a show recently that I watched, which was Macross Frontier. The story was there, the characters were there, the universe was already built, and yet it didn't do anything. So when I'm thinking about things in these senses, that's where I get my ratings from. And then the last point I try to do is I compare genre. And this is where, you might see a horror show get a higher rating than it deserves. In terms of anime, horror just doesn't really get represented too much. So I'm kind of taking it from a small pile and comparing it to the others. So I'm watching, let's take a show like Ghost Hunt, and then a show like Go Sick. Both starts with G, so...
Are they post-apocalyptic?
They are not.
Because you have that thing about
Yeah, I mean, if it's post-apocalyptic, then it's just the greatest show ever. Clearly, I recommend it to.
Obviously.
I mean, more reason do you need? Then it's the greatest thing ever. Well, anyways,
Hokuto no Shinken, the best show ever.
Genre is that last point where it's the best way to gauge how good a show is. Going back to horror, there's just not a large pile to pick from. Romance, drama, the rom-com area, there's a large pile to pick from. Does something do anything to separate it from the rest? Really gets bonus points, and that's where a show like Maizuni Kaku really shines, while a show like Clannad does nothing. But in the story, in that sense, it does so many things wrong where it gets the below average score. So this is where my justifications come in on things like that. That would be that +1, -1 area going back. So I don't like scoring things based on personal feelings, but there are exceptions to the rule. Something like Gundam Wing, where I have a lot of nostalgia to it. I'm like, okay, I've watched it so many times, I can't really take those glasses off anymore, and I'll fully admit that it's probably not an 8 or 9. Probably. It's definitely not an 8 or 9, but in my eyes, it is. There aren't many shows like that at all with me, but that would be one example of something that's an outlier. If you put a scatter plot of all the shows, that would be something that would stick out. So that's how I rate anime. Tori?
Yeah. Well, obviously, I'm the one who rates anime the best because I have the lowest average score on Mal, so that makes me correct.
That makes you that means that you watch a lot of shit.
No, it means I'm correct.
Okay.
The way I kind of agree with some of the things that JD talks about. The other thing I'm a little bit I disagree a little bit on is the fact that I think that no matter how you look at a show, or no matter what kind of variance you use to rate a show, what you try to look at story, you try to separate personal feelings. I feel like to a certain extent, personal feelings is always going to slip into pretty much anything you try or anything you do to rate it, because I mean,
sure.
Ultimately we all have feelings on something. We all, have stuff that we are biased towards or biased against. That is just normal. So when it comes to me and my ratings, they are not a very good representation of what I think of a show or anything really, because like Hiki joked about immediately, I give Future Diary a 10, and I know a lot of people probably immediately go, why? And to answer the question simply, first of all, I've never changed a rating on my anime list since I got into anime. So, but the way that worked was essentially, the way I described Future Diary is, it's stupid, but it's my kind of stupid. I like that kind of stupid, and when I watched it, my Future Diary was everything I wanted. I had a desire to watch something, and Future Diary pretty much hit all the points that of the show I wanted to watch at the time. Hence, I really
in the
liked
state
it.
Of mind for it.
Yeah, basically, I was primed for that show when I watched it. It was exactly what I wanted. But for me, ratings mostly just becomes a bit of a gut feeling. I can't properly explain because there's no formula, there's no mathematical equation that I use to calculate out a score for each show. I don't sit there and think story, music, animation, character, art, like all of these things. I don't sit there and give individual scores to that and eventually try to calculate out a score based on all information I've gathered. It's mostly just my anime list. I don't really take the scoring there because that's the only place I do score. So I don't really take the scores into consideration that much. I kind of just go. I tried to the best of my ability to separate like the shows that I really like versus the shows that I don't like. Let's try it again. The shows I really like versus the shows I think are good to average versus the shows I think are bad and the shows I think are absolute trash. So, that's kind of how my list gets divided. So I can often look at a show and I see, like, I gave, for example, Snafu an 8. And every time I look at that, I think to myself, that's just not quite right, because I love Snafu. But I also can't, like, because my gut feelings tell me that it is an 8, so I can't really raise the score to a 9. Right? But I see stuff that is over there where I feel like, do I really like this better than Snafu? Right? So it's like, it becomes a bit of a weird thing for me. So it's like, that's why I think if you want to know my feelings on the show, you're kind of just going to have to ask me about it and, like, talk to me about it, because I can provide you many reasons for or against the show. That score I give it is not going to give anyone a satisfactory answer. You're going to sit there and you didn't like this, but you really like that. Why? Have to, right? And then I could give you an answer, but just looking at the scores, it won't make sense. So yeah, pretty much my scores are almost entirely gut feelings. And I've never changed a score. I'm in no plan of changing anything, because I don't really rewatch shows. I might do it in the future, but I don't have a desire to rewatch anything so far, and so I don't change the score. And even still, I'm in the mindset of, like, even if I do change a score, it's not really gonna change the fact, like, if I rewatch Future Diary now and I hate it and it drops way down the list, essentially, still, that's not gonna change the fact that when I watched it the first time, I really liked it, right? But it's like, so even if the scores are quote-unquote updated to what I think now, that won't really matter that much. And if you go to my list, you'll also see that, not for the very early shows I watched, I didn't do this, but that's because I watched those before I actually created Mal and whatnot. But for the longest time, when I score something, I also put in the start and end date on it. So a lot of shows I have on my list, you can look at when I watched it and when the score was given. So you can like kind of just give people the idea that, or myself the idea that this is what I thought about this show at that time, at that moment in time. So yeah, that is basically how I rate. Joe, how about you?
Okay, man. Well, I agree with what a lot of everyone has said, and I disagree with a lot of what everyone has said. So for me, I personally do categorize 10s, but I only have 3. I have Welcome to the NHK, Neon Genesis Evangelion, and End of Evangelion. Those are my only 3 10s. Those 10s are there because they are, in all practice, a 9 that I personally have a special soft spot in my heart for. They're just a 9 I have a fetish for, as Tori would have been one to point out had I have just said that. I do the same thing with 1s. They're just 2s that I think are so disgusting that they sit below the rest of that entire list. They are so incredibly horribly A1 that I couldn't sit there and just say, no, you know what, this didn't make me sick to my stomach. I didn't waste my time watching this. That being said, as I said to JD earlier, I would much rather watch a 2 than a 5. That's not because I think the 5's fine. I think the 5 is better objectively in the scoring. I think the 2 is a better thing to watch because you understand what went wrong with it. So a 5 is fine, but it's ultimately perfectly average. It's very boring. Now, with all that being said, I personally like to rate without my personal feelings in that, with the exception of that plus or minus 1 that Hickey was talking about earlier. I personally assign a 10 to something that I think is a 9, by all respects. That is very special to me. So, I have very few 10s. I have a lot of 9s, however. I have a lot of things that I think are very good. Like, just fantastic is what I would actually score a 9. So 10 is just a 9 with a fetish. 9 is fantastic. 8's very good. 7 is recommendable. 6 is fine. 5 is kind of just take it or leave it. 4 is bad. 3 is very bad. 2 is atrocious. And 1 is, I wouldn't say appalling. I would say more disgusting. 1 is a waste of your time. That's how I've always rated things. As I've said in previous podcasts, I've been watching anime too long to just sit there and sit on my personal feelings for how I feel about something. But ultimately, when it comes to my extreme scores, so that would be, a 10 or a 1, it is entirely feelings, because there's not an incredible amount that I can remove my personal feelings from my entire scoring list. I just can't do it. If I give something a 9, I think it's fantastic. I think everyone should watch it. Everyone owes it to themselves to at least give it a try. If I give something a 2 or a 1, I recommend that unless you are going to shit watch, you ignore it. So as JD was saying earlier, instead of me recommending anything from an 8 up, I personally recommend from a 7 up. I recommend starting at my 9s and going from there. My 10s are very personal, so I mean I like to recommend by show in that respect because it's very challenging for me to say, hey, you should watch Welcome to the NHK. Welcome to the NHK is a very hard-hitting, deep story, and if you haven't dealt with depression or any of those themes in that series, it'll do nothing for you because it's not super pretty. The soundtrack isn't amazing. Like, it's not an amazing work. It's not a master class work. What is amazing about it is how much I related to it at the time and how perfect it fit what I needed it to fit. So that's why a show like that would earn a 10, whereas something like Cowboy Bebop would still sit at a 9.
So,
please go.
So, I mentioned personal feelings, and you're mentioning it now. What about shows, or at least genres, that you don't generally like? So, for example, a lot of people don't like mech anime,
Me.
that whole genre,
Me.
such as a certain Norwegian we might know.
Me.
Not can't be you, impossible.
Yeah, the other Norwegian.
When you don't like a genre, how would you go about rating that? How do you take something you don't like? How do you take that personal feelings out and begin to rate something like that?
I tend to rate it based on its merits and demerits. For instance, I don't like the romance genre as a general rule. So if I like something in the romance genre, that means it has to do its job incredibly well. Because it's not like I don't understand what romance is, it's just I don't enjoy watching series like that. Tori's favorite romance, which I'm aware of, is Golden Time. And I personally heavily enjoy that show. I like it a lot. It has adult characters, you have a proper story arc, you have people going through real world problems. It's not just a trope fest. It's more of an actual narrative and story going through it, whereas something like Clannad, as you were saying, seems to be kind of contrived and really juvenile in its entire approach to things, which I can't wait to read the hate mail based on this, but it's very juvenile in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an example. Interrupting you rudely, I might add, for myself. We met. You mentioned.
So him you interrupted rudely. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well,
You can't win, JD.
It's an accident with you.
Sure.
So, the whole picking apart the romance genre in general, the word you used was juvenile. How the anime industry and how everything's written for that genre as juvenile does irritate you and me, Joe, in particular.
Yes,
How it pushes romance aside for a simplistic outlook on, oh, they like each other, how sweet.
Well, I like to state it as humanity is not simple. We are in certain regards, but when it comes to our how we think about romance and things like that, we evolve. And I've been in a relationship for the much better part of a decade. I understand why I love the person I love, and to sit here and try to sell me on the fact that you love her because she was nice to you one time in high school really kind of just disgusts me down to my core, because you're simplifying something so heavy, so incredibly necessary to the human condition, period, to, oh, well, she was nice to me, so of course I love her. That sits very poorly with me. I find it disgusting that you're going to make the human condition something that is very complex and very rigid, very difficult to understand, very difficult to kind of piece together. Most people go their entire life without figuring it out. You're going to break it down to, oh, well, she was nice. Oh, well, I like her because she's pretty. I hate that. And because anime is so full of tropes and it's made for a younger audience, just basically in general, it seems to kind of portray it that way. So I tend to stay away from genres that portray things in a young, juvenile fashion.
Well, even when, I mean, okay, so Hickey and Tori, maybe you guys can chime in a bit,
I was planning on it.
because you guys will have you guys will have a different outlook on something like this because well, no, Hickey, maybe. Hickey, how long have you been watching anime again?
13 years, possibly more.
Okay, so maybe if I say something, because Tori's only a few years on this. He wasn't watching this when he was
I am the
like going through puberty, for example.
on this quest. I am the one who got into anime the most recently.
And it's not even close either.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
All right, but I will be talking to Joe on this one just because I know where he's coming from. When we were growing up and watching anime, and say that we're 10, 11, 12, even 13 years old, and we watch a romance comedy or just a romance in general, a drama, there's a lot of things at least I can admit, that I didn't understand at the time. But I did understand what it was like to have a crush on a girl, right?
Yes.
It's not a simplistic feeling, as you said.
Exactly.
It's filled with a lot of anxiety. It's filled with things like, do I tell my parents? Do I tell my friends? How do I do this? It's you might be writing your feelings down in a journal / diary. Your body's going through changes. The way anime portrays a lot of these things isn't realistic, yet it's put in a realistic world, and they'd rather put in moments of oh, she looked at me, and then that's it. There's such a lack of inner monologue and conflict that it really takes so much away from something that could be so much better. Because I do like romance, I love drama, and they could be doing so much more, but this whole juvenile aspect that they surround the genre with really hurts it. That's why something like Maizuni Kaku is a standout. Yes, it's a comedy at heart, but, and I hate using the word but, because that kind of
Undercuts
negates
the whole
everything you
thing.
say prior to that. But in this sense of but, it's more but to the genre of romance. Maizuni Kaku holds the story, and it has so much conflict still there, where the character has to find a job, the character's struggling with school. It's a linear path filled with bridges and roads he must cross along the way. Is it still anime? Absolutely, and that's why someone like me still enjoys it. It doesn't beat around the bush to what are real world issues and what's surrounding. I mean, in the third or fourth episode of Maizuni Kaku, you find out that the main girl he falls in love with is a widower. Widow?
Widower is
Yeah,
the
widow.
correct term.
Widower is the correct term.
That would
Thank
be
you.
for her.
Yeah, and she's not over the death of her husband that she fell in love with. And there was and it's not that simple on her end. Love and romance is two ways. And for it to be described as such, as Joe says, to be so simplistic, is where romance anime gets lower ratings immediately.
Yeah. But
So now I'm curious to hear what Hickey has to
I
say,
wouldn't-
and then Tori, you can chime in
God
later.
damn it! I have the perfect. The reason why. God damn. Sure, Hickey, go.
Thank you. Like I said, I have this system where I put a +1 if I like the show. So I don't have that much of a problem if I don't like the show. Of course, the genres I don't like generally won't have this +1, which is not actually bad, because if, like, for example, I don't really like sports shows that much. But if a sports shows have an 8, it's a true 8. You know, it deserves that 8. It doesn't have a +1. It was a 7 that became an 8 because I enjoyed it. Still, I think, first of all, that scoring is very subjective. And personally, I really don't I really don't like scoring shows. When I start doing my mall list, I start filling my mall list was when I entered this Discord channel, and my shows didn't have scores. I start scoring then because people start complaining at me that they didn't have scores. Because if I don't explain my system, it's hard to know why in a romance with an 8 is the same as a action show with an 8. I think it's fairly
so
easy,
you say that a
to
romance
put my feelings aside, especially because I'm a law student and I work in a courthouse. There are times that people go crying to me saying, "Look, I need something, or else I might die." I look at their face, they're crying, and I deny it because they simply don't have the right to. I'm used to casting my feelings aside. Of course, sometimes it happens I can't do it, but most of the time my +1 works. At least for me, it would probably not work for someone like Tori, which use more gut feeling to simply score the shows, which I don't mind. I think it's good. I think Tori has a very good sense of scoring shows. Sometimes he just go, why? Well, why did you give this show an 8? And he go, I don't know. I thought it was an 8, but still.
I have never said I thought it was an 8.
Hickey,
you just said that with fucking. You just said that with the future diet. I thought it was a 10 because I really enjoyed it. You can explain why it is a 10.
I haven't thought it was a 10. Got into it, but I tried to put it down in the sense that what it did for me at the time was what I wanted.
Yeah,
and that is fine. But I'm not reviewing. I'm not reviewing Future Diary right now.
That was it.
That's why I'm not going into it.
Yeah, that part. It's not what did for me in the time I was watching it, but it's something more general. Because I have a very easy. I think it's easy to cast my feelings aside, especially my personality, the way I work, where I work, and what I study from my daily life. I study to cast my feelings aside and judge someone or defend someone or accuse someone. So it works for me. My +1 system, I think, if you think it's interesting, you should adopt. The -1 also works, but if I don't like a genre, the chances are it's not gonna have a +1. And just like I said, it's not a bad thing because if it has an 8 over 9, it deserved the 8 over 9.
Hickey, after Tori's answer, I want to go back to something you said earlier.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
But yeah, basically what I was going to touch on was while you were talking romance, because like Joe mentioned, I'm a big fan of Golden Time. It is my favorite romance, which, again, this is why I come into how my scores can seem false, because people will, of course, go into my mouth and they go, but wait, you gave Clanada 10, right? So it's like, so how can you say that Golden Time is your favorite romance? But, well, I'm not going to get into that now. The point is, when I look at something, when I think of a romance, because I agree with you guys in the sense that I like romance. I really do like romance, but I don't like most romance shows. But what Golden Time did for me is that separates it from other romance, which is why it scored so well. Even though I think it could have been scored even better if it didn't, because it does have bullshit. I'm not gonna lie, it does have bullshit, and that's why it ended up at a 9. It's got a lot of bullshit, but that's a different thing. The romance itself, though, does some things that I like, because it has stuff like the childhood friend character, and the childhood friend character, the one that always gets the short end of the stick. But I thought in Golden Time that was done well, in the sense that, because technically the childhood friend is the character where it's well, she has always been nice to me, that's why I like her, and the girl he ends up with is the girl who is basically been a bitch since he first met her, right? So it's like, it does that reversing where it's like, okay, yeah, she's pretty, but like, come on. She like treats you like you don't exist, and like she's going for some other dude, and like she's being mean to you, and really the only reason why she even decides to get close to you is because you're friends with this guy, right? But it's
I
like,
have my own thoughts on the tsundere trope. Let's save that.
it's because of that, right? That they kind of start, in my opinion, they start to appreciate each other more. And of course, one of the reasons why I really like Golden Time is because I really like the way they portray the relationship after they get together. Because I don't know, I kind of like seeing all the different stages of a relationship that you go through, from the early excitement of we just got together, where the show was being absolutely 110% cringy with every interaction these two have when they meet each other in front of college, and they just like start running at each other's screen turns pink with hearts, and they go, I love you, in broken English, right? All the way to the later stages in the show where they are much more relaxed around each other, and they have less of those weird cringy moments and more of just general like heartfelt moment and moment of just talking, discussion, like in the room where they talk, where they like, because these are adults, so eventually they come onto into the topic of sex. When is the right time? When do we do stuff like that? And I don't know, I kind of like romance shows when they start delving into different aspects of a relationship, or just kind of try to break down, why they like each other, how they got to like each other, and just like how their relationship works, essentially. How are they around each other? Because it's easy to say, oh, these two are in love, they're a couple now, let's go and do our stuff, right? That is a route that a lot of romance will take, and a lot of romance will take it because they get together in the last episode. That is the end. It's like, yeah, they're a couple now, bye. So yep. So yeah, I think Golden Time is a recent example of a show that really does well at portraying a relationship and portraying romance much better than Toradora, which coincidentally the writer also did Toradora.
Toradora was fine until it was thrown right into the gutter in the last episode.
Yep, that is why I say what I like to say is, like, I of course have no evidence of this, but what I like to say, Toradora feels like a romance show the writer made before she got in a relationship, and Golden Time is the story she wrote after getting into a relationship.
One is far less romanticized, and I agree with you on that point. Toradora tends to hit me or strike me as kind of like the ideal perfect route for like a tsundere character.
Yeah.
Whereas Golden Time is more of a realistic, like, this is how people really work. And as you know, I dislike Mario Kata basically on a grand scale. But she does have the ability to write. Like, she did Kisniver, which people don't like, but I do. She did Golden Time. She did Toradora. She did IBO, and I'm very disappointed with how that ended. But Golden Time is definitely her standout work, period, because it does portray the characters as these are adults. They are going to college, and they have to deal with everything that's going on with them right now, or everything is going to fail. There's no sitting down and just pretending it doesn't exist and waiting later. There's no circumventing the entire situation. It's just you need to sit down and talk like adults to each other. And if you don't, this relationship will end, and it will end horribly. So it tends to portray things in a really realistic sense, and I greatly appreciate that.
So Hickey brought up a phrase during his latest explanation was one genre's rating may not equal the rating of another genre, such as an 8 for a sports anime could be less or greater than your rating of an 8 for a comedy anime. Is anyone else like that?
Yes.
I can agree in the term that you have to rate things in accordance with their peers. For instance, I like mecha. I think Neon Genesis Evangelion is the greatest quote-unquote mecha ever made. Well, if I'm rating it against, a shonen, it doesn't make sense to rate it against a shonen. It's not.
Right.
So you have to compare things with the things that are in their genre, and that's kind of how you make your ratings. I mean, you don't see those. Well, I'm sure you do see those stupid fucking lists on the internet, like top 10 anime ever. That doesn't make sense because you're not rating them against their peers. You're rating them against things that aren't even comparable to them. It's like rating oranges versus apples. They're both fruit, but that's it. They are both anime, but they have nothing to fucking do with each other.
Yeah, but Joe, I like the taste of apple more than orange.
Okay, but what if I like the taste of orange more than apple? These aren't objective statements. That's the problem I have with a lot of these lists, is you're not comparing, top 10 sports anime of all time, because those are comparable things. They're all about sports. They all have the same set of tropes. They're very reasonably the same.
They're all the same show.
It's like comparing beers on a general plane versus comparing IPAs. You can compare IPAs because they have the same general makeup, but you can't compare an Oktoberfest to a lager, to an IPA, to a stout, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that earlier with how there's not a lot of horror anime to pick from.
Mm-hmm.
So a higher rating for a horror anime is probably gonna be there because there's just not much else to compare it to. But you can still compare it as an anime as a whole, but you can't. But Joe, you said it exactly right. You just can't compare something that just isn't there.
Exactly. I'm gonna kind of undercut what I just said, but I have a basic general scale of what I think is good, and then from there I start comparing it against the rest of its genre. If that makes any sense to you. Like, if I think a show is bad, I don't care about its genre. I think it's bad already. But if a show is fine, then it moves into its next step. It moves into how does it compare to the rest of the genre. Of course, unlike a lot of people, I've seen 900 series, Hickey's seen over 1,000, Tori's at 500, and you're at 550, something like that.
500.
Something like that.
600.
And once you understand like how these things compare to themselves, how these things compare inside of their genre, I think rating gets a little easier at that point because you have a backlog of things to compare it to. It's like the first series you've ever watched was probably Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, something like that, or Pokemon, Digimon, whatever, and you thought it was the best thing ever. You loved it. Looking back now, we actually had this problem with our last podcast where we watched a series and it was like, yes, Sailor Moon was not as great as I remember it, and I hate that feeling. It's because you had nothing to compare it to before. Right. Now you have an entire catalog of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,000 plus anime to compare it to, and you go, this actually isn't that good. It just came out at the right time.
Even then, it wasn't even at the right... It was... Anyways. So this brings...
I just want to say something.
Okay.
Like, it's interesting that Joe Senpai was saying, he usually goes and compares a show to its own genre. He looks at the genre and said, okay, this show is fine. This is a fine comedy. Let's look at another comedies. What is interesting is that, like I said before, I'm a law student. I'm trying to do that. There's something that is called here two weights and two measures, which means having double standards. You should not have double standards. And I think comparing to, in my opinion, of course, I'm not saying it's wrong. If you like doing that, you should keep doing that. I think it's not very good to compare the show inside of its genre, but you should compare it to every single show. I think it's better like that. I think it dries out a little bit of the subjectiveness, but not that much that you go out sprouting bullshit like my taste is objective.
Well, obviously that's stupid, but what I'm saying is...
But it kind of...
Please go.
Please.
Okay, so as I was saying, it's the way I do it is more like you can't compare Usain Bolt to Stephen Curry. They're not
Stephen Curry.
Yeah, whatever. They're not in comparable sports. One is the king of the three-point shot. It's like comparing Larry Bird to Usain Bolt. One is the fastest runner on the planet. The other one can sink threes from anywhere on the court. You need to compare things to their peers, and that's that's kind of where my thought process comes from. I understand what you're saying. It's just kind of on that fundamental place. Yeah. It's if I want to rate things within anime as a spectrum or within how good they do what they're trying to do.
Well, there would be that second step you would have to do just on the sports comparison there. Usain Bolt's also the greatest runner that ever lived.
Yes.
Stephen Curry is far from the greatest basketball player that ever lived.
Who is the greatest?
Then you have to go in. Then you'd have to go into, okay, well, which is the more difficult sport? Is it the running or the basketball? So you kind of have to decide on your own which aspects trump other aspects.
And that's just not a comparable subject.
I think it's comparable, and you can make arguments for it.
Well, sure, but on an objective plane, you can't.
Oh no, okay, yeah.
No, not objectively. never objectively. You see, that is the fun part about discussing how to rate shows, is that those two kind of things, and every single thing we talk today, they are not like sides of the same coin. They are side by side. Sometimes people go to our MAU list or go to a review, see the score and says, okay, that's the score, but why the score is that? And we are talking about that, why the score is that. It will be really cool if every single day we would have a lot of PN saying, look, I look at this show, just like the JD happened to JD. I look at that show has this score, why is not on your favorite list? Or this show, this is a comedy and it scored 8. But you have this romance and it scored 8 as well. Why they are the same score? Why?
Right.
Sometimes looking at the hard numbers, kind of forget. You kind of forget that it's not you that rated that show. Your standards might not apply to that other person. So I think it's great to come out and talk about how to rate shows. I think, exposing a lot of point of views, and now I know how you guys rate shows. I won't look at your 8s like they were my 8s. I will look at your scores like they were my scores, like I used to do, because I think we never discussed how to rate shows, and I think that's fairly interesting. That is something that is the interesting about other people discussing. Actually having discussions and not just ball licking and psycho jokes with other people.
Well, for instance, and I have one of the highest affinities on MAU for my friends list, and we're at, I think it's like 55%. JD and I are at like 48%. We basically all agree on the same things. It's just how we place them on our list is the only real difference. It's interesting to see like that. I greatly agree with everyone on this podcast, even Tori, even though he likes trash.
So your taste is trash, is what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, except for that half we agree on. But other than that, yes. Yeah, but it's an interesting point to make that we agree so heavily because we sit down and discuss and we understand why each other likes certain things. But that number doesn't mean a goddamn thing. It really doesn't. Every single solitary conversation you have with someone where you sit down and you actually properly talk about what you like, what you don't, and you have a conversation with them is infinitely more important than, oh, they gave that series a 7 and I gave it a 10. Fuck them. That's bullshit. That's petty and that's garbage. If you can sit down and have a discussion, that's the proper way to talk about things.
Well, it's funny you bring up that 7 to 10 aspect, because after watching Little Witch Academia, the TV adaptation of the new one, Tori, what did you give that show? It was a 7, right?
Yes, 7.
Yeah, and I gave it a 9, hesitantly not a 10. But we both really enjoyed the show.
Yeah.
Now, one of us enjoyed it more. We both agree that, yeah, it's probably going to go down as one of the better animes of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Does my 9 and is my 9 and his 7 really that much different? Not really.
Once you talk about them, they're the same. You just have to understand who your author is, who you're talking to, and who your audience is. So who the person speaking is talking to. You need to understand, like, If I was talking to JD, JD would need to understand that he's speaking to me, and I would need to understand that I was speaking to him. I know a lot about JD. JD knows a lot about me. We understand how we rate things. So if we say, like, I didn't like it because of this, it doesn't mean you shouldn't like it because of that. It means you don't like it for this specific reason, and I understand that because that's just how you rate things. That's just what you like. That's what you dislike. That's where the subjectivity becomes relevant, whereas objectivity will never be the case between friends talking.
Yeah.
Right. So I got a follow-up question here from our romance drama talk earlier, because that was a very passionate topic in how we rate that genre. One genre in particular that I have a difficult time rating is comedy.
Okay.
Now, what does it have to take for a comedy to be in that upper echelon? For me, it's really hard to pick out a comedy that is that high. The only one I can think of off the top of my head right now is Great Teacher Onizuka.
Okay, I'm going to have to agree with you that I think GTO is fantastic. I think Nietzsche Bros is fantastic. I think Nietzsche Joe is fantastic. The way I score comedy is how well it does its job. Does it make me laugh? Is it trying to make me laugh? Is that how it's trying to make me laugh? The thing you can't do is you can't be generic. You can't play on tropes. And if you do, you need to subvert them. You can't just be like, this is the tsundere character. She's a bitch. That's not going to make me laugh. I've seen too much for that to be like, yep, that's hilarious.
Okay, so let's take it a step further here.
Okay.
Let's take a show like Kimaguri Orange Road, which is a romance comedy.
Yes, it is.
So let's just say it's a comedy. It was pretty groundbreaking for the time. The tropes weren't really a thing yet. Yet there was the tsundere and Genki character that we can look at and go, that's what those two are.
Two things. One, I think I underrated that show because I did not watch it at the right time. Two, I saw it in the late 2000s. So I was already past the proper time to watch that. That is reflected in my score. And if you just sit there and look at my score, you'd be like, that deserves a better score. What's wrong with you? And I'll tell you, I watched it when I was like 16. It released in what, like
16-year-old in you
2001?
was just like, hell yeah. Oh boy. So, getting back on the topic of comedy and how we rate it, the part that gets me to rate comedies higher is, what does it do? And Tori, you mentioned this. Joe, you mentioned this. Hickey, you mentioned this. What does it do to separate itself from other comedies? And one comedy in particular I'd like to bring up recently was Love Tyrant. Very hard comedy, became and had more serious elements to separate it from the group. So it wasn't just straight comedy, straight slapstick. It did something else to keep the viewer invested. And then when the comedy happened, you were laugh out loud laughing, rolling on the floor, whatever it may be. And that ups the score.
I think why Love Tyrant did well is because of what I said a little bit earlier. It subverted your feelings every step of the road. You expected it to just be like some bullshit, like, romance narrative. It was, but in the subverting way, it also undercut everything it did and still had the comedy overtake that, like, hard drama romance.
Yeah.
It was still ultimately funny. It wasn't just like a stupid romance drama romp. It wasn't just, oh, well, she likes her and they have problems, but this comic moment happened and that didn't happen. It was, all that happened, but the comedy was still the focus. It was still the point of the series, was still the comedy, and the comedy was done very well. That is why it was my favorite thing that released that wasn't long running when it came out.
I mean, the way you guys talk about that show, I don't know, maybe this is just me, but like when I hear you guys talk about that show, I kind of just immediately think back, like, that sounds kind of similar to how I feel about Gekkan Shoujo no Saki-kun, because that does a lot of the same things in my opinion, where it's just
it's like a very comparable series.
Yeah, like it just seems like, oh, right, I guess, oh, it's a romance. This girl is trying to confess to this guy, and it is. but at the same time, that is not really the point.
Yeah,
the point
it
is
is,
everything
but not
that
really.
Yeah, the point is everything that kind of stops that from happening, which is then becomes the comedy. And it's a show that I think does that kind of like, yeah, that type of comedy very well. Granted, the way I rate comedy is also incredibly simple. Everything that's TQ and everything that's not.
I knew you're gonna mention TQ. Like, there's no way you're going out of this podcast without mentioning TQ.
We all know TQ is actually just a ripoff of Soul Eater.
Yes, it is. No, but
actually...
I'm joking. I'm joking. I don't think TQ is the end all be all of comedy anime. I don't. It is. I like it.
Great.
I like it. I think it's good, but it's not the end all be all of comedy. I see a lot of people compare it to Gintama. I haven't seen Gintama, but I mean, it's also just TQ's just 2 minutes an episode, so I guess that would be Gintama on crack. But if that was the case, but yeah, no, for me, comedy in the very simple terms of how do I rate comedy? Does it make me laugh? Does it not make me laugh? How much does it make me laugh? Yeah, basically like that. There are exceptions. You do have GTO, which I like for more reasons than just the comedy. Although the comedy was funny, I'm not simply watching I can't sit there and say that I'm only watching GTO for the comedy. Whereas when I'm watching, and the same thing over like Bokura wa Minna Kawai So, which I think has a lot of good comedy, but I'm not only watching it for the comedy. Versus something like Gekkan Shoujo no Saki-kun, where I am actually mostly watching it for the comedy, because, well, the romance aspect wasn't that interesting to me. Like, it doesn't really try to play that's that interesting, because it's just, a girl likes a guy, and that guy is pretty dense. So yeah.
So, Hickey, why don't you get the last word here, and then we can finally wrap this up.
Well, you don't want a 3.5 hour podcast?
Sure.
Well,
We can go there still. We're going to talk about Lain.
I don't think I have a lot of oxygen left.
Oh no.
So we need to keep going.
Open a window, Hickey.
I'm recording by inside of a car, by the way. That's why I'm saying I don't have a lot of oxygen. I'm opening the window. I like said before, I divided my score in simple things: music, art, animation, and storytelling. A comedy should be rated good. It's usually solely on storytelling. Mainly the characters in the story. They need to deliver what they want to deliver. Not exactly be funny, because there's a lot of things in Japanese comedy that aren't that funny. And just like Cromartie High School, they have a lot of heavily Japanese. There's a dog barking. God damn it!
Don't worry
I'm
about it.
closing
Keep
the
going.
window.
It's just a dog.
Like Cromartie High School. Cromartie High School has a lot of heavy Japanese jokes. The radio program, the Freddie Mercury, the delinquents, that kind of stuff.
Freddie Mercury Japanese
Sometimes
jokes.
it's yeah. No, I know. The Freddie Mercury is just it's the foreigner, the weird foreigner that comes out and he's always riding a horse and he's always shirtless for some reason. That kind of thing. But sometimes comedy in Japan, like Japanese comedy, is not that funny. But still, it delivers it. It makes me jiggle. So if it tries and if it succeeds, like if it achieves some success in a Japanese point of view, not my point of view, of course, but I think, like, I go online and see people, talking, oh, this show is great, this show is very funny, and I'm like, okay, I can see why those people think that show is funny. It's a +1. It makes me laugh, like Nichibro and everything. It's a plus. It's 2. It achieves the higher mark. So it's not that difficult. My problem is rating shows like shoujo and josei, because I don't have a heart. And because I don't have a heart, those shows are kind of very difficult to me. When I finish them, that is also a problem. Also, I guess to finish up, because we hit 2 hours mark.
Mm-hmm.
What about the shows you drop? Do you guys rate them? Because there are people that rate shows they drop.
I believe everything.
There's only one show I dropped and I scored because I thought that I was doing the right thing of scoring that show, and it's a show called Avenger. It is a bad show. It's a post-apocalyptic world and moon, and every single episode they have pauses and being thrown around. It's not good. It was so bad. I was like, I'm dropping it, and I'm warning people why I drop it with a score, and it scored like 2, because that's at least it moved. So what about you guys?
I personally believe that anything that I've actually attempted to watch, so anything that I didn't just push off as bullshit, deserves a score. I think someone who's reading my list has to understand that when you see something unscored by me, I haven't finished it and I haven't dropped it. If I drop a series at episode 4, that doesn't mean I don't have an opinion on it. It means it deserves whatever I have given it. So, like, I give it a 3. Well, a 3 is not worth my time. It doesn't mean it's terrible to you. It might not be. But, I mean, we don't have to agree. That's not really the point. So, if I give something a 2 when I drop it, whoop-de-doo, you have to ask me why I don't like it, and I'll tell you. I am not opposed to answering anyone on any question on any score I have, because they're all basically how I rate things, how I feel about them, what I understand about what was going on in the series. I'm not opposed to answering those questions. I don't really quite understand the people that don't score what they drop, because you still have an opinion on the series. It should be reflected in what you gave it.
Yeah. Well, then I can go, because I am one of those that don't really score shows that I drop. Because, well, no real reason. I could score a show that I drop. Easy. And it's not because I'm against scoring something because I haven't finished it or I haven't got the entire story or whatnot. I don't care about that. The best reason I can give you as to why I don't score something I drop is because, I don't know, I guess I just don't care that much. It's like it's kind of a case of just out of sight, out of mind. Like, it's on a drop list. I don't really check my drop list, so now it's gone. I might as well have not watched it. There are exceptions, very few exceptions, but there is one exception, and I'm looking at it right now, and that is a nice little 2011 classic known as Rio Rainbow Gate. I dropped that after episode 2, and I gave it a 3. Now I think, by me now, because I watched this very early on in my anime watching career, so me now would probably give it up.
My anime watch career.
I would give this show today a 1, guaranteed, because this was positive me. This was back when I used to think everything was good, and I gave it a 3, because Rio Rainbow Gate, it is bad. It is really bad. It has a 5.99 on Mal. It is awful. And when I dropped that show...
Some people like it.
I'm sure there's someone who unironically likes that show, but still. The point is, I hated this show so much that even though I dropped it, I had to make sure that I give this show a score, because it deserves a bad score. So in my mind, of course, a 3, because it says very bad. That is a very bad score. But me today, I would give that show a 1. And I've only watched 2 episodes. And quite frankly, the other 11 episodes, they don't even matter. I don't care where the show goes. I don't care what the show does. I don't care how it ends. I don't care that it has the worst black character in the history of anime in it. That people find that funny. It doesn't matter. The show is awful.
Alright, so I score shows I drop very much in the same way Joe explained, where just because I didn't finish a show doesn't mean I don't have an opinion on it. If I drop a show, there's a damn good reason why I dropped it, and it's going to get a score. Then there are shows like Bleach, where I dropped 366 episodes in. You bet your ass I'm giving that a score. Just because I didn't finish the last 30. I'm sure there are plenty of people that started One Piece, there are plenty of people still watching One Piece. Should we not give it a score because it hasn't finished yet? So, everyone has an opinion over something they watch. Whether it's one episode or 10 or 100, you have an opinion, it deserves a score. That's the way I look at it. So let's move on from how we rated anime to... You guys ready?
No.
Oh, I'm
Everyone
so ready.
No, get me off.
Everyone have a fresh beer?
No,
No,
get me
I
off
drank
this
them all.
podcast.
I have a fresh oxygen
Yes.
because I
Do
opened
you want me to
the
go
window.
grab a beer? I can go grab another beer.
Go grab another beer.
I'll be right back.
I just went the 2 inches behind me to the mini fridge with my small apartment that I will be leaving in a couple months.
I don't have beer.
Yeah, don't worry, JD. Like I said, you're a nice guy. You deserve something better. So I'm pretty sure you're gonna get something good going.
Well, in the end, it's just a job. And there are many more jobs out there. You just got to be willing to find it and do whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
Let me know.
Ready.
Ready. All right, here we go.
So, the main anime topic. Serial Experiments Lain.
Ooh.
Since this is Joe's anime, I believe it was on your favorite list that we could make fun of.
Sure
Yeah.
was.
Why don't you give us the rundown of what this thing even is?
Well, JD, I don't exactly understand why you don't like it. I mean,
We'll get into that.
it's almost as though you don't seem to understand, and really, it's a shame because I mean, you seemed an honest man, and all those fears that you held so dear, they came,
God.
they whispered directly into your ear. But you know what they say? I won't hurt you. But you know that it means so much, and you just don't even feel a thing. I mean, I'm hurting.
All right, Def Jam Poetry. We did hear that at the beginning of the podcast for those not watching on YouTube.
Help me to breathe, please. So, all right, I guess I'll get into it. Lane's...
When it come out, who did it, all that stuff.
Oh, you want all that information? Okie dokie.
Yes.
It was made by... Well, it's produced by fucking everyone, apparently.
Triangle
Studios Triangle staff. Licensors are Funimation. You can see it on Crunchyroll now because of their great little partnership. Which is where I watched it until midnight last night, which was fucking stellar. You have...
It's not in Norway, though, right?
Nope.
Just
Why
like
would it be?
everything else. Lane,
Yeah, I'll watch it until like 1 a.m.
Lane, as you see her between episodes 1
And
and
it came
9.
out in 1998.
Whoop-de fucking new. Alright, anyway. Lane, as you...
From July 6, 1998 to September 28 of 1998 on TV
You want to
Tokyo.
tell me anything else? You want to tell me the producer, the director? You want anything else?
No, I just want to say that the studio ceased the operations in 2002. It was formed by Madhouse staff.
The opening is Duvet by Boa.
This is going to be a nightmare.
The opening is good, by the way.
Okay, so you have Lane, who's a nice little introverted 14-year-old girl. She gets a disturbing, fucking strange email about how, like, you know, we walked home together once from one of her classmates who killed herself the day before or the week before or whenever. Really, I don't exactly remember.
She died.
Yes, Tori, she died. Thank you. That's what committing suicide.
That's
what committing suicide means. Jesus Christ. Anyway, she finds out that she seems to hold a secondary personality inside of the internet, or the Wired, which I guess really is only functionally okay to call it the internet, because in practice it seems to well, let me put it this way. A car is not simply its own chassis, it's the entire car. The Wire is not simply the internet, it's a little bit more. Lane's an androgynous girl, but I mean, she is female, I guess.
She's a flat female at 14.
She grows in power and influence and develops a mind, and then that slowly becomes an ego, and that ego turns into what is essentially the internet in our time, and this basically chronicles everything up until that point.
And when did it come out?
I just
believe
said
Picky
so.
already said the entire time, but it
Did he?
aired in July 6th, 1998, all the way to September 28th, 1998 as well. Premiered in summer 1998. The producers were TV Tokyo and
That's
Geneon
what I
Universal
heard.
Entertainment, Genco, Pioneer LDC, TV Tokyo Music, Fuji Pacific Music and Publishing. The licensor were Funimation and Geneon. Studio's Triangle staff, and the genres are dementia and drama, mystery, psychological, sci-fi, supernatural. The episodes are
Yeah, it's got a
23
bunch.
minutes apiece. The ratings are 17
Yeah.
plus. It was a
All
TV
according to
series.
The original
Holy
creator.
Mel.
The original creator is Yasuiki Ueda. The directors were Masahiko Murata, Ryotaro Nakamura, and Shigeru Ueda. It was written by Chiaki J. Konata, and the character design was by a guy called Yoshitoshi Abe,
Yeah!
which, by the way, took a lot of inspiration in Renji Murata, as you can see by Lane design.
Do we read the reviews as well?
Would you like me to, JD? Because clearly you're asking me to.
Yes, just go to my name list
Dude,
and
I
read my
come
very
prepared.
short review over it.
Derp, 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 babork, bebork.
Oh god.
The episodes are called Layered, and they are... No, okay.
We can go forever.
Okay, so the anime is broken down into 2 arcs and 4 parts. Part 1, 2, 3 is within arc 1, and arc 2/part 4 is the same thing. The show is a short little 13 episode thing you can knock out in an afternoon easily. Episode 1 is exactly what Joe says, where the high school girl commits suicide. Girl gets an email, and she asks her father for a Navi computer system. Do you know what the acronym for Navi is, by the way? Does anyone have that?
Nope.
That's a negative. I can look it up.
No.
Okay. I'm just kind of curious.
I know it looks like a Apple computer for some reason. A lot
well-
of things in that show looks like Apple
Because
computers.
Apple's
Yes.
a cult.
Yeah.
It's funny you bring that up, because that was at the time the big, Apple was very big. Windows was more or less the up and coming, because Windows 95 had come out a few years prior, kind of changed the industry. So Lane gets herself a computer and kind of
All right, I found it.
gets involved in the wire. Okay.
Navi computer is a reference to Apple's computer. Tachibana, meaning Mandarin Orange. In Japanese, Navi is the abbreviation of Knowledge Navigator and Handy Navigator.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem, you're welcome.
So part 1, I have dubbed getting the Navi computer. We learn Lane develops 2 personalities: her wired personality and her real world personality. In which her wired one is more bold and forthcoming, and then and things start to unfold in that sense about her, as I've interpreted, as her associative identity disorder. And then it ends with her upgrading the Navi system, which, as I interpret, as kind of as the progression of the story and her progression with the computer and the wired itself.
So you think she has DID? Dissociative Identity Disorder.
Well, at this point in the story, yes.
Okay, well that's something I agree with, but please continue.
Yeah. So that's part 1. Everyone, Joe, since you're the most well versed in the show, go on about part 1.
The Lane fag.
All thoughts and everything.
Well, part 1, I mean, she's just kind of really awkwardly walking around, kind of trying to figure shit out. I personally, I'll get into it later, but her internet persona is not something she is aware of. It's something that simply exists. And, she finally asked her father, who is clearly tapped and prepared to give her everything. 'Cause as the delivery man says, I wish I had something this high-tech, period. I use a home-built system. So this is clearly something masterclass when it comes to Navi computers. This is something she's not going to need to upgrade. And the fact that her father would just buy this off a whim really kind of says a lot about where they are specifically inside of that world. She begins upgrading it, and she goes a little crazy, and she starts wearing wires all over her face, trying to figure out where to put everything. And it's kind of comes off like an obsession in the first arc, I'm gonna say.
Or the first part?
No, the first arc. She's kind of
okay.
She's kind
so
of
the
crazy.
first 9 episodes. Yes. Yeah. It's a progression of her obsession.
Yeah, it's definitely a progression, but I think the final destination she goes from the she wants to achieve by upgrading the Navi is different. She goes to school, and there's a girl, one of the friends on school. She's crying, and she goes, "Why is she crying?" Well, she kind of received an email, and it's a live email. It's live, a live text. You say to the computer transforms in text and sends to the people. Not kind of what we are doing that, but like something more rudimental.
Mm-hmm.
And from the girl who committed suicide. And the girls, especially Alice goes to Len and said, "Did you not receive an email?" And she was like, "I don't know. I don't use Navis that much." She goes home. She start using the Navi. She sees that she received an email and start having a conversation with the girl who killed herself. And basically, the girl says, "I just abandoned my body. I don't need my body anymore, my physical body, because it's useless. It's something useless." Lane keeps going, "Why did you commit suicide? Why did you commit suicide?" And she says, "I found God.
Those who are listening to
God
the
is here."
podcast after
Something
we
like that.
have basically just lost tape.
So for the first 4 episodes, what? Anyway,
So
for the first 4 episodes, she's trying to talk to this girl that died. Then after that, until episode 9, it's something more. She's wanting to discover. She kind of delves deep down in the wire, and because of that, she discovered more things. And once you go down to the bottom of those things, it's not more about the girl who died. It's something more.
yeah, it's definitely a show with a very strong start. And at the time, I believe I first watched this. Joe, it was on Toonami in the States, correct?
Absolutely correct. It was on the stage. It was on the States very late, but I mean, it was very, very ambitious compared to what we were used to.
I believe it was 2001, wasn't it? Or 2000?
In 2001,
it was only
I
a
was
couple
like
years
8.
after its original release. It was on Toonami.
Gotta remember.
I'm not totally sure on it.
Gotta remember. In 2001, I was like 8 or 9.
Yeah. But I didn't even have a computer back then. I didn't have a computer until I was in Germany in 2005. Family never had one, so even watching this, I was like, "Is this what the internet is?" Because everyone I knew had something like that. I would go over to a friend's house and use AOL Instant Messenger, so it kind of made a lot of AIM. So it was kind of surreal watching this when I personally didn't have any sort of this kind of technology, and it made me hesitant actually to really delve into what tech could be capable of. And this wasn't just the only show or movie that did something like that.
Well,
it has a very, very extreme start.
Well, one of the things that I find amazing about this entire series, as a general rule, is how many liberties it took, and now that we're in 2017, how many liberties it took that were 100% correct. Because it takes a lot it takes a shitload of leaps in logic that were absolutely just fucking 100% spot on correct. People do take on another persona on the internet. People do talk to each other. We're literally on Discord right now recording this podcast, and I would be shocked if everyone wasn't exactly or wasn't a little different than they are outside, like on their outside world.
Oh yeah.
I would absolutely not, because I know we're not exactly the most social people on the planet, but I mean, when we're in Discord, we are very social with each other, and there's really no problems we have. It's
Yeah, just wait till. Well, I mean, person-to-person contact does bring about different personalities in people,
exactly.
as opposed to online. I mean, you see some, to use a word loosely, trolls online. Would they really have the balls to say some of the things to a person in real life? Say some of those things to a person in real life?
No, their e-penis is much too
Exactly.
large. But on the internet, you're safe, relatively.
You're in your little safe space, or what you think could be. And what the show delves into is breaking down that safe space, if we're comparing it to something today.
Well, one of the reasons why I like Lane so much is that it had the balls to take that liberty, that just writing liberty, and go off and do exactly what it wanted to do. And it was very ambitious. It was very hard to understand, but it didn't care that it was very hard to understand. The people it was looking to market towards would find it, would figure it out, would overanalyze it. People like me found this series, and we dug into it. And I mean, I have way too many notes for this series right now for a 13-episode series. Period. Dot. As Hickey knows, because he saw all my notes. It's kind of gross.
Yeah, that's a lot
It's
of
kind of
notes.
fucking gross, but I mean.
I see the show as something you definitely watch when you're older, when you can understand more.
Well,
because I've watched this show a few times now. A couple times when I was younger, and honestly, I didn't get a lot of the themes. I didn't understand what was really happening. It was very confusing. I did write a small review over the show, and I mentioned how the show doesn't give you any information. It leads it up to the it lets everything up to the viewer on what's actually happening.
Yeah.
see now a lot of
And I do appreciate shows like that with that kind of plot mechanic.
a lot of people dislike that it doesn't like just hand it to you on a silver platter. There's no proper answer to how this story should play out for you. But
Well, the issue is that there's no answers at all. It's all up to you.
exactly, and that's why I appreciate it. Whereas I know this series is not for everybody. I understand that wholeheartedly and completely.
Oh no.
But if a series is willing to hand you everything on a silver platter, it feels kind of shallow. That I figured this series out. Well, of course you did. It hands you everything. This series is something that asks more of its viewer. It's a series that asks you to figure it out for yourself. It asks you to figure out whatever you can, and it wants you to converse with the community to make an answer. Just like Lane had to do, just like when she started developing her ego later on into the series. What happened? She was not just Lane. Lane in episodes 1 through 9 seemed to be like a false Lane, if you will. I think she was actually I think that was like false memories implanted that you were watching. And then Lane's from episodes 10 to 13, that was not her, because she's not real. But that is the ego of the internet. That's who the internet is. That's who the Wired is. Lane Urakawa from episodes 10 to 13 are the ego of the internet. And that's what you got to see later on in the series. Had you not have conversed with everyone around you, you wouldn't know that people were that ballsy because they were safe behind the wall that was their screen. They're safe behind their desktop. That's who people are down at their core. Whereas as it sits, people are more like Lane Urakawa. She's more reserved.
We'll definitely get into more of where you're coming from on that the later we get into which parts they are. Tori, how did you think the series started?
Well, for me, like, I've tried watching this show twice. And the first time, I dropped it after episode 1 because I just didn't like it. And the second time, I finished it and still didn't like it.
What didn't you like about it?
Well, that's kind of the thing, right? Where Joe and people come from. I understand this. I appreciate its idea of kind of forcing the viewer to construct or to take what the show does and to kind of try to make sense of it all. like I kind of to oversimplify it. It's a make your own adventure type of story in a certain sense. But like for me, what I felt what I felt like, and this kind of became a problem for me right from the gate. What I felt the show lacked for me was this initial like pull that like makes me wanna like extract information from it, because I feel like I'm kind of just dropped in there and then it's like, hi, figure it out. And I'm constantly being, when I'm watching this, kind of, I've also made this joke to Senpai many times, kind of feels like the show presents this this pretentious idea where it's like, it feels like the show has this head so far up its own ass that it's like, it wants the viewer, in my opinion. It feels like the show, it wants the viewer to not understand. It feels like it wants the viewer to leave the show going, what?
Well, I mean,
Right?
Tori, you just don't seem to understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Tori,
I understand.
I
understand.
Tori, I
things.
actually,
No,
You
again.
seemed an
wow.
honest
Not
man.
again.
Shut up.
No,
I
stop.
understand things in it. Do I think that I have the complete picture? No.
But
that
Tori, all
also
those fears
stems.
you held so dear.
Shut up, Joe. That also stems, and I will say this, that also stems from the fact that when I watched this show the second time, when I finished it, I also kind of had the show ruined for me. Because as I was watching, I keep getting comments from the side going, look for the number 7! Look for the number 7! It's really important! And that keeps forcing my mind to look for 7s. I don't know why I'm looking for 7s. Right? So it's like, I kind of come into this like everybody's trying to give me hints on how to figure it out. And that is just in terms of, leaves me with a bunch of loose ends that doesn't lead anywhere.
Well, you see, shit like that is why I don't like some people's input. Like, when you were watching Gunbuster, what did I tell you? Watch the calendar.
Yeah. Which was a bit annoying because it took quite a while before they showed the first calendar. So I'm like, I don't
But
get
as
it.
soon as you see a calendar, just watch it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's an important aspect in Gunbuster, where the concept of time is a major theme.
Yeah.
The number 7 in Lane, which we'll get into later, it's Tori. I'm with you on the fact that there's so much not information.
Yep.
The fact that the show wants you to be confused, I have a major issue with.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I will
I
say,
also
the
have a
number,
major
the number
issue
7,
with
as far
that.
as I understand, it does lead into certain things because there is stuff that will come up multiple times if you look for these things. However,
Fine.
they are not it's not a like show revolution. It's not a looking for the number 7, finding the what was it, the project or whatever and stuff like that contains these numbers.
Protocol.
The
Protocol 7.
You're kind of, yes, there's information there, but that is not the show. That is not the entirety of the show. You don't figure the show out if you spot the 7s, right? Like, that's not. It's kind of like
No, it's not going to be something like the movie The Number 23 with Jim Carrey. It's not that.
It's
not
essentially
that ridiculous.
It's essentially people who have watched the show who is like kind of subtly, and at the same time very hard, trying to steer your mind to go in the same direction that theirs did. They want you to have the same experience they had, and that doesn't really work because that's not what Lane is. You're not supposed to have their experience. You're supposed to have your experience.
All right. So,
Yeah.
part 2 begins with the introduction of the Knights of the Eastern Calculus, which is the dumbest name I've ever heard in my life. It's like a bunch of English words thrown together, if you ask me.
Yeah.
My personal feelings aside for that, it's basically a cult group out to break down society or something. Senpai, please enlighten me on what the Knights of the Eastern Calculus are and what is their mission.
Okay, my dude. So here's the way I break this down. You have the wired, or the weird, or the strange, which is Lane. That's Lane Arakawa. You have the girls in the story. That's, all of Lane's classmates, which you only see the females. The Psyche,
Right.
which are like the inhabitants of Siberia, the people who live there. Mika, and then like the mother, father, and Lane's actual computer, her Navi. Then you have the religious aspect, which would be the Knights, the Men in Black, all of that.
So who are the Knights because in this part 2, the next like 2 or 3 episodes, you have the Knights of the Eastern Calculus and the Men in Black. That's when they start coming into play, the plot forefront, etc. What does this religious cult and the Men in Black have to do with the story?
I believe their entire purpose is to start walking your way towards Lain gaining proper sentience into becoming the Wired.
Do you think they're real people?
Yes, they are, but they are part of a cult group. They're trying to find someone who they think is their god, who is Lain, who is the Wired, who is the internet in general. And they're trying to steer her into proper sentience. They're trying to steer her into being a being.
Well, that's kind of what the Knights are going for.
As opposed to being
correct?
A concept. Whereas the Men in Black are trying to watch her. They're trying to observe if that happens. Maybe to take a stance against it, maybe to help it through. But they are simply observers. They are, if you've ever read Marvel Comics, they are like the Watchers. Mm-hmm. They are there to watch whatever happens, to observe it, to not take part in it happening or it not happening. Simply to understand that it happened or that it did not. Whereas the Knights of the Eastern Calculus are more there to facilitate the entire process happening.
Okay, so upon this introduction of this group, these two groups, Tori mentioned this earlier. This was for me the point where the show's objective was to confuse you and leave you with just about every question imaginable. Who are these guys? What is the purpose? Is Lain imagining this? Are they real people? A lot of questions with zero answers.
I'm gonna
How
go ahead and toss some spoilers out right now. I don't think episodes 1 through 9 happened at all. I think episodes 1 through 9 were implanted memories.
Okay.
You think so?
I think they're false memories given to Lain so that she can start gaining a human sentience.
I don't think the writer's that smart.
Have you seen the rest of the series?
Yeah. The original producer of Serial Experiments Lain said in a bunch of interviews that this show was made to be confusing. So, I don't know.
Yeah, he's an asshole.
Right. But, there's another part to it. He said, well, I don't like how Americans came in after World War II, and I want to do something with Japanese traditional values, and then Americans and Japanese will discord. Something like that. But the guy's kind of crazy. Don't
I
listen
believe
to
I've
him.
said this with...
He got disappointed because people were getting like the same conclusions over the world. It's like, yeah, of course, you use like a bunch of Western things. Chiaki uses a bunch of Western things. It uses Carl Jung collective consciousness. It uses a lot of existentialism ideas. They are a bunch of Western thoughts. They are not Japanese, so
no,
I think it's funny. But
Hickey,
anyway.
you're right. In that sense, the show, I think that's where the show shines the most. Actually, not with this whole, as Tori said, create your own adventure, so to say. The themes in the show are spot on. The aspect of the show I appreciate the most and really, really loved was the atmosphere and music.
Oh,
it was creepy.
There was no music though.
Well, it was more or less the way its use of sounds kind of created its own.
Yeah, there was noise.
Well, I mean,
but
there
not...
was to me that it was music because the way. Think of someone with, whether it's identity disorder of some psychological problem, where simple sounds creates music in your mind. Therefore, it creates an atmosphere and environment that you're in.
I will put it to you this way: the soundtrack of Lain was flawless, but the background noise that's going on while she's doing things is far from it. There's ambient noise constantly. There's constantly something going on in the background that you can hear. It puts you directly where you're supposed to be, as opposed to putting you in this perfect little music studio, essentially, where it's like you only hear what the director wants you to hear. You hear everything going on around Lain. You hear
And I really, from the humming of the computers to electrical sockets kind of shorting out every now and again, everything is very meticulous with the way sound works in the show. It's very good.
Yeah.
I will wholeheartedly admit that.
Yeah, it's like they're constantly trying to keep the viewer on his toes the entire time.
You're constantly unsettled.
Yeah.
they want you to pay attention the whole time, because if
And to me, that is the essence of Japanese horror.
should
That's Asian horror.
should you subvert your eyes from Serial Experiments Lain for a second, you will miss a dozen things that the story demands that you understand. It demands that you understand that electricity works exactly how it does in our world, in this world. It demands that you understand that these computer components can fail. It demands that you understand that these computers are not perfect, but they are very close. It demands that you understand how the wired works. It demands everything from its viewer and nothing from its creator.
So upon meeting the two, getting back on track with the show, upon meeting these two groups, Lane starts then to have hallucinations. And
Not only her. Her sister as well.
her sister's also correct. Her sister's also having some. Her name's Mika, right? No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Sister's
think
Mika?
it's Mika.
Because she's in contact with the religious group communicating with her. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, kind of. I didn't see like that because the father and mother, the parents, they weren't having hallucinations. What I thought is that Mika is closer to the age of Lane, and they explain about the wavelengths on Earth and kind of the stuff like that. And Lane was starting to have hallucinations. Those hallucinations were her diving in the wire. And I think because her sister was younger and had a kind of almost the same wavelength as Lane, she started having the same hallucinations. But like
Just kind of tapping
Mika
into
is in
her,
the software.
her brainwaves.
Well,
because
yeah, but
Yeah.
like, Mika is in the software. She's not Lane. Lane is a software. Lane's prepared to the information she was receiving. Mika wasn't. Mika was a normal girl, and because of that, because of the amount of information she was receiving, she started going crazy.
Well, I think the entire story of Lane is built up like a conspiracy theory. You're supposed to just accept that the events happen, but you're not supposed to be aware of the fact that they are happening until after the fact. Hindsight is always 20/20. Up until that episode 10 mark, you've witnessed like the duality of what's happened throughout the series. You've understood that Lane is both this meek girl that you actually see on screen and this fucking monster that exists in the wired that does whatever she wants.
Well, this is where this is the point in the show, the episode 5-6 mark, where Lane is completely submersing herself within the wired, and this is where I interpret that the dissociative identity disorder fully starts to split. I do think at the beginning she does have this this dilemma, this mental disorder, and her further obsession with the wired distorts and separates her own personalities.
Like I said earlier, I don't actually believe that these episodes happened. Like the analogy I made,
Well,
like the analogy I made a bit earlier. A chassis is not a car. Basically, what Lane is remembering is after the fact. She's remembering things that didn't happen, things that were implanted so she could become a human-like conscience.
See, I don't think that at all. I think it's much more simplistic that she's slowly becoming part of the wired and losing her physical body, which was the theme at the show at the beginning, with the girl saying, I no longer need my physical body.
It's
Yeah,
tough
I think-
because right around episode 9,
I think it's-
you're literally told that every memory she has could be a fabrication.
It could be, but that's only could.
It could be, but like,
It's supposed to
It doesn't-
confuse the viewer.
yeah, it doesn't explain Alice, for example.
Well,
Oh, her best friend? Her quote-unquote best friend?
Yeah, it doesn't explain the best friend.
You basically have
Because, if everything is a fabrication, until episode 10, why Alice is there?
you have to remember that both of
Did Lane rewrote her memories so she can go and save her?
you have to remember that both of our personalities collide at episode 10, and which one wins?
We're not quite.
Yeah,
we're
no,
not
but what about
there
the best
yet.
friend? What about the best friend? Does her memories were like rewritten so that she would remember Lane? She would remember what happened between her and the teacher. That kind of stuff to culminate on her going to see Lane on the house.
Mm.
That's why I think it doesn't it makes sense if Lane was alone. To the first 9 episodes were just hallucinations. It didn't happen. It was just fabricated memories. But because of Alice, because Alice is there, I don't think it was. Because Alice is our anchor on reality.
Right.
But
yeah,
you know.
she's arguably the closest person to Lane.
But the amount that she was cast aside in those later episodes, which I do want to talk about when we get there in arc 3 and 4. But just to
or part 3 and 4.
just to keep this talk alive. I mean, the amount of symbolism and just repeated actions that go through what
No, yeah.
it kind of makes it hard that she's not just a set of code kind of repeating, because she does keep repeating the same mistakes and the same actions, the same problems, the same conclusion, the same answer.
That's human nature.
Only in a roundabout sort of way, because she does the exact same thing. She doesn't do basically similar to the same thing.
We're gonna talk about God and God later, right? So I think we can move and talk about how the people in this show react to things, and how they look like a code because of God. Because you're gonna delve in it later.
I'm glad you could feel that
okay.
coming. I do like the way
well,
the series touches on the Tower of Babel and the Gates of Babylon. I do like.
Oh, it gets heavy in that second third of the show for sure.
Please continue, JD.
Okay, so there's an episode to end the second part where it's focused on psychic energy and psi power and experiments. I think this throws away a lot of. This was the episode that made me personally have a lot of theories on why it's actually happening and why things later in the show happen. Because their experiment's gone wrong. They're trying to harness this source of energy that may or may not exist. And ultimately it destroys a lot of the kids involved. And now, and then it goes into how the religious group has the like the blueprint to what's going on with those projects. And the Men in Black now have this objective to take him out and take Lane out, because the religious group is focused on Lane being their savior, or someone or something else.
Okay.
That they're kind of hinting on at the same time.
All right, so right around this part,
Yes.
you have the religious group, the Knights of the Eastern Calculus, or what the fuck ever. If you
See, you don't like the name either.
I hate the name, but, I mean, it doesn't matter. If you've ever read the Book of Revelations, it basically this delves into a part that is pretty famous. Whereas I would see the Knights as the false prophet that claims to be the voice of God, right? And that goes on, and they try to command the world through that voice of God. Well, Lane is that God in this world, quote unquote, because she is the internet, she is the wire, she blah 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 blah. So she's trying to overcome that throughout, in like the same way the Book of Revelation took care of it, where you try to crush your opposition. And basically that's what winds up going on as the story progresses. Just in a more biblical sense. I mean, I know this thing gets really heavy into religion, and that's a really touchy subject, but I mean, when it comes to the Book of Revelations, it seems pretty, like, point for point going through this series.
So I'm curious to know what Tori's thoughts are, because we've reached basically the halfway point in the series. From someone who felt like the whole objective of the show was to confuse the viewer and not really understand what's happening. Tori, what do you have to add here?
Well, like, we're basically, at this point, right, I'm still in that, like, mindset of, my mind is trying to process the lack of information given, right, while at the same time keeping in mind these suggestions I have gotten from the side, even though I'm not necessarily want to think about that, but once that idea has been planted in your head, it's kind of hard to ignore it. So it's like, I'm kind of sitting here and I'm kind of going, okay, these things are happening, these people, these hallucinations, and I am sort of, I feel like this disconnect between me and the show kind of just keeps growing, right? Where it's like, I don't find that thread that is I can grab to pull myself back in. It's not there. Right? So I'm like sitting there
I
going
would agree.
like,
It's a major flaw with the show for sure.
Yeah.
If you don't see the thread, you can't if you don't see the thread or threads, you can't really grab onto a cohesive plot or even story that could or could not be there.
Essentially, and in my opinion, like, this is just the way I think, but in my opinion, I think a lot of the threads that you can grab onto, they kind of materialize, or they kind of start to, like, put that idea at you, or for you, fairly early on. So it's like, you have to kind of get into it. You have to kind of, like, grab onto it very fast, and that whole, in my opinion, also, there's a that's where I understand where Joe comes from with his theory on this, because I feel like the entire show is constantly doing this thing where it's like begging you need to question everything that is happening. Is this real? Like, is this actually happening? Do you actually think this is happening? And that's where it's like, it becomes confusing later on, because you're like, am I supposed to still question this? Is this still, like, not happening, or is it happening, or where
it kind
are
of gives
we?
you that same. It gives you that same sense of kind of the theme behind the Matrix.
Yeah.
Where is reality what you think it is?
Yeah. Are we watching reality now, or is this fiction? Right? Is this what's not happening, or is this reality?
As for
it's odd,
and that's like
it's odd with how crazily high-tech Serial Experiements Lain is, well as how reeled back and close to something that we've been studying for 2,000 years is.
Yeah.
Something like the Bible is just still so relevant to a story that's so into the fucking present, like Serial Experiements Lain. Something like, what is the future? What is reality? What is present? And it just sits there and it shits all over it. Whereas you still have the same story of, like, you know, who is the beast? Who is the false god? Who is the great whore? Who is the real god? And it's still going on inside of Serial Experiements Lain, while still being thrust forward as the gospel of this century. It's still being thrust forward as this is a possibility for what could possibly be happening. Something like The Matrix is a little bit weird in its agnosticism in general, but the
theme is still very similar.
The theme is still very similar to the Book of Revelations, to just the Bible in general. I do really appreciate that it still took that, like, religious rite and moved it forward. I like the creativity in doing that. It is still pretty strange for someone who's agnostic like myself to sit there and enjoy a series like this as much as I do, just because of how, like, sacrilegious, it's nearly sacrilegious as it is.
Yeah. No, but I will also say this just to kind of throw something positive in there instead of just being negative on it, because, believe it or not, I don't actually hate Lain. That is, like, the weirdest part for me, because it is a show that I can't dislike, despite my confusion with it. One of the things that kind of throws me back in, and kind of like what I appreciate with this show, is, like I've said, I feel like you have to question everything because you don't really know what is real, what isn't real. And what the show does really well over time as well is kind of, you can feel in the show as you're watching it how this line, the separation between, you know, the wired and reality, this line, what is real, what isn't real, how blurry that gets over time. Like you really feel it. Like at first it's kind of like, okay, this is real. That's like, is it? Maybe. And it's like you kind of start, what is real and what isn't real? What am I supposed? Is this what's happening? Is that what's happening? You really feel like the more the show progresses, the blurrier that line gets.
Well, continuing on those thoughts, episodes 7, 8, and 9 focuses on essentially Lain in the real world versus herself or the other personality, however way you want to interpret it, of her wired self. Then there's an episode titled Rumors. And then there's an episode titled Protocol, and this is where the number 7 supposedly comes in.
Yep.
About Protocol 7, this man named Masami Eri, and how he thinks he's the actual, like, wired deity. It all kind of focuses around this plot of what is real, what is not real, what matters, what doesn't matter. And there's a shit ton of symbolism and illusionary techniques used, metaphors. To me, it gets out of goddamn control.
Yeah. I just want to point out, before we start, I just want to point out that from episode 6 to episode 7, there's one of the biggest inconsistencies on this series. That Lane's room gets blown up at the end of episode 6, and on the beginning of episode 7, it's like it never happened.
Okay, well, anyway, right around this point is the part.
Yeah, for those wondering, Hickey just kind of cut out of nowhere in his explanation.
Yeah, I'll go on a limb and just try to guess what he kind of tried to say. This is basically the point where you have the difference between true Lain and false Lain. So,
Right.
what I would call in Revelation terms is like the fake whore and the true God. You can kind of play with that analogy however you want, because you could make the case that the Knights of Eastern Calculus or the Men in Black are the true whore or whatever. But if you're looking at it by my scope, by the Book of Revelations and all that nonsense, this is where the shift happens. This is where you figure out who God is and who the opposition are and how it's overcome. Period. Dot.
Am I cutting out?
You are proper now.
Okay, I just want to say that I didn't say anything like that. I said that between episode 6 and 7, there's one of the biggest inconsistencies of the series.
Oh yeah.
Well, on episode 6, Lang's room gets blown up.
Yep.
And on episode 7, it's like nothing happened.
Well, that would tie into Senpai's theory of everything keeps kind of resetting to convenience and it never actually happened. It's all an illusion. Am I correct on assuming that?
You would be absolutely correct, because those memories were all implanted to make her have a proper human sentience.
But then there's the reasoning before, where clearly this family is very well off, and it could have just cut to a later time frame when it's all fixed.
You got to remember how convenient a lot of this shit worked out, though.
Oh, it's very convenient.
So I mean, like, you can't
Yeah.
sell the fact that like they might have just been really well off and made this all go away, because I mean,
why not?
That guy,
or they could have just made some more and built another room, or who knows?
Remember in the first arc where the guy literally shot himself in the head? That actually factually just disappeared. That just wasn't a problem. A girl was right next to him, and that disappeared. That wasn't a problem. You can't sit there and tell me that in Japan any amount of money would fix that. Not at the middle class level where they are.
For those wondering, there was an episode, I believe it was episode 2, where Lain goes to a nightclub at 14. Might I add?
Welcome to Japan.
Yeah, sure. And this guy's high on a drug called Excel, where I guess they can be one with the wire or see some bullshit. I don't know. It might as well be LSD.
Basically,
And then
LSD.
yeah, and Lane with her kind of split personality disorder at the time of my interpretation goes up to him and is like, "You're not actually here," some shit, and then he kills himself. And the way I go about it is everyone kind of tunes it out. They're scarred, but because Japan likes keeping themselves, keeping things to themselves, that's very much the Japanese culture. That's the way I interpret that moment. So why wouldn't that be the same to a bomb exploding in a house or a computer malfunction where things go off? That's where I tie that in. It's all just kind of blow it over the roof kind of society.
I can't buy it. Mostly because of the way it all plays out. That it's just like the next scene, everything's fine, all the time. Like that's kind of what drove my thought process into this whole. Well, it must have been some kind of simulation to process her into being a humanoid style of psyche.
I don't know. The way it's written, I have no reason to not disbelieve it, though.
But you also have no reason to believe it.
That's the problem.
That's the strength.
Yay!
That's the strength of the series, because it is ultimately however you take it. It's all incredibly dependent on whether or not you want to accept it. And if you don't want to accept it, that's fine. That's what drives these 3-hour-long conversations that we're having right now, is the fact that you don't agree.
My acceptance was, it doesn't matter.
Well,
okay, the shit went down, who cares?
It doesn't have to matter. That's the nice part. It fits no matter how you put it together. It's a bunch of square pieces that you're calling a puzzle. Whether or not you want it to make hieroglyphics or Lane's head is irrelevant. It all fits together.
But when you have something like this, where you're going about a maze and threads of plot and story, when do you hit that wall where you can't go any further? That's where so many people have a problem with with the show, and that's where I have an issue with the show. The fact that I can just go, okay, well, my theory works because this reason and this reason, that's good enough for me. I have to then accept my own theory.
You don't have to, but you chose to. If you choose to accept your own theory, that's fine.
if I didn't choose to accept that, then the story itself then is ruined from there.
For you, yes it is.
Yeah,
but
everything's ruined. I basically have to start over again and come up with another thread line to pull at.
Yeah, but the story isn't written for individual people. It's not written for the lowest common denominator. It's written for whoever wants to put it together. However you put it together is subjective for you. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. It's clearly...
But it does matter if you like it, because then the whole thing's ruined.
It matters for you and for no one else.
JD.
If you put it together for yourself or not.
Yeah, JD, look. We are not talking about Lane anymore. We are talking about philosophy right now.
But that's what Lane has become.
We did the transition.
I think it's interesting we're talking about it because I think Serial Experiements Lain is a very good way to describe the existentialism,
which is it's a thread of philosophy, where people don't see first the human being as a thinking being, but as a being. We are mundane. We have bodies. What does that mean? And some people think is that you need to live a passionate life and avoid these scenes through the way, and how the existence of the not existence of God influences you. So I think Lane hits that, and that's what you're trying to say. For you as a being, it's highly different for Senpai as a being, because both of you have a vision. Both of you have your own self, and then you guys just, I think Lane is an interesting thing, and that's how it was thought to be, to pull out that kind of feeling of the people, Of course, it was meant to be a thing to divide Americans and Japanese, whatever, because the guy is kind of crazy. But anyway, it was meant to drag out those kind of those kind of feelings. How do you accept it? How do you view this? This is something interesting. Of course, there's a lot of inconsistencies. Of course, there's a lot of lost threads. But still, I think by discussing what we are discussing now, this series achieved what it wanted to achieve.
See, I think the entire point of Lain was to take whatever you wanted from it and run with it. It was made more to facilitate a conversation than it was to be understood. For instance, you have a series like Code Geass, which is very easy to understand. It's you watch the story, that's what you get, and then you talk about what the ramifications would be, and that's how you would talk about Code Geass. Whereas this show is you come up with your own conclusion and you respond to people how you came with that conclusion. It's a precursor versus what is to come. You talk about how you got there, not what happens after you got there. It's something that's a little more shrouded in mystery. It's something that you have to look into for yourself. You have to understand who you are to kind of pick apart and finally come to a conclusion on. Whereas something...
Well, that was the whole theme behind The Matrix.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, Ghost in the Shell was the theme behind The Matrix.
and then Ghost in the Shell was the theme behind The Matrix. Yeah, we all saw what happens with that. It just seems... the whole, whether it's the cyber brain and diving into that neural network, is the same concept of do you or do you not have a body?
At what point are you a person? At what point are you not a person?
Exactly. Yeah. Sticking to that theme. Yeah, sure. Lain does a great job with that. How it goes about it.
Lain takes it one step further. At what point?
So it's so up to you. I have an issue with it.
At what point do you become a god? It seems to be the point of Lain. At what point do you stand above the people that are your peers? At what point do you become their ruler, their commander, their god? At what point are you better than everyone around you?
Because in the last 3 episodes, the final arc, part 4, you might say, this is where Lain becomes one with the Wired and becomes that now omnipotent and omnipresent being.
As I was saying, she always was
as you were saying.
That omnipotent, omnipresent being.
You think Lain was always that. I think she became that. And for those that need definitions, omnipotence is kind of the God is all-powerful. Omnipresence, God is everywhere.
Yes. Just to kind of...
One thing, just real quick. Symbolism. Protocol number 7. 7 being the perfect number.
Sure.
You got that.
A lucky number as well.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. That was that. I think Lain... I was thinking about it, but Lain's kind of Jesus. You know?
Lain fits both definitions.
Because she was...
It's kind of fucked up. Because she fits both the definition of Jesus, the second coming, as well as the beast, the return.
Yeah, it's very weird because, you know, she was in the Wired. She achieved, she got a physical body. And at the end, God, which was, quote-unquote God, which was the guy who programmed Protocol 7, which 7 being the perfect number, wanted Lain to die and go back to the Wired and fulfill the prophecy. That is interesting. That is very interesting.
The prophecy is brought out through this entire series where it is also never properly described. And I find that to be a very telling nature of how the story is told. For instance, it's kind of strange that she both portrays the beast, which is the devil, Satan, the hate of humanity, that grown consciousness of what everyone agrees to be dissatisfactory and disgusting, as well as also being the one true God, the one that knows all, the one that knows everything about her creation, the people of the planet. It seems to kind of tell a nice, interesting, woven story about how you don't need someone to hold your hand to connect to something that is quote-unquote above you, because I don't agree with religion either, just as JD doesn't, as you said earlier. I don't really believe in a god and all that, but I believe in the teachings. I like that it's still portrayed to you in such a manner that you can go, okay, this makes sense within the lore of the story, that Lain is your one true god, or Lain is your demon, or Lain is the demon of humanity. I do appreciate the fact that they don't lay it on the table for you. I like the fact that they kind of let you come to your own conclusion. They don't treat you as dumb throughout any part of the series. They never kind of hold your hand and make you feel belittled by how they approach any topic whatsoever. The downside is you do have to figure that out for yourself. The upside is if you're willing to figure it out for yourself, you have a much more fulfilling series. If that makes any sense.
Kinda. Then the actual downside, and this is a topic that I know Senpai will often talk about when it comes to most shows, and that is the actual fan base of Lain. Because they do not accept your theory at all. They have never accepted anyone's theories when it comes to Lain. There is a general belief that Lain has one true story and one true meaning, and that is spread around a lot.
Like I was saying earlier, I believe that the thought process of Lain was you come up with your conclusion and then you talk about how you got there, not what your conclusion means after the fact.
I know. But most people, I'm not going to say most people, but a lot of people that are very into Lain do not agree with that.
Well, then they're cunts. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, fuck them.
I know, but again, just like the point you often make against a lot of series, it's a kind of the thing I have against Lain. I don't like their fan base at all.
That's fine. I mean, all you have to...
That shouldn't... I mean, I don't like a lot of the One Piece fan base. That doesn't make me less enjoy the show.
Like
it didn't for me either.
The point I have to make is there's the death of the author, but I believe you can push that forward into the death of the fan base. If the fan base is shit, but the series is still good, it doesn't fucking matter how they feel about it. You still took the same piece out that... Like, I personally think that the way I look at it, you know, like, you come up with your own conclusion, and then you talk about that conclusion with other fans of the series. I think that is the way that the creator wanted you to speak about that series. I don't give a fuck if people inside of the fan base agree with me or not. It's not my problem. I don't care if they fucking agree. It's when I come together with guys like you and JD and Hickey and Whiskey and Semi and everyone in the Discord, and they come back at me and they respond with what they thought about the series. I don't really care that some cunt on the internet that watched Lain 38 times doesn't agree with my theory, because they're not going to tell me why they didn't agree. They're going to just sit there and heavy breathe and slam on the keyboard saying, oh no, this is exactly what happened and there's no other thought process. Fuck you, dude. This entire series is clearly about opening a dialogue between your friends and you about how you feel and how you got to that conclusion in this series. If you disagree with that, that's fine, and I don't really care. But I do want you to open a dialogue with me and talk to me about it, because that's the entire reason why this series exists in my eyes.
Okay, so I want to know what everyone's theory is on what happened in the end. Because there is no...
It was...
Based on the series itself and the show, there is no... To me, this is something without a wrong answer. It's like interpreting poetry. It's whatever you take it as. So what is your opinion on how it ended and what happened? Hickey?
Can I go first? I'm raising my hand, by the way. Okay. Like I said before, this show is heavily based on existentialism. And existentialism, there are two main chains. One chain thinks that God exists. The other chain thinks that God doesn't exist. Like, one thing it exists, the other one doesn't exist. That those kind of things, how these influence, like, how it makes you be what you are, the being that you are, that God existing or not existing. What happened in the end is basically one of the ways the people that doesn't believe in God kind of a way they made out to deny, which is the contradiction. Lane went to God, and he was like, I became God of the Wired. I know everything else. I had this idea. And she goes, but was it your idea? Because you are the god of Wired, but the Wired, although the Wired is very old, like Lane said, it wasn't the first thing. So probably you had this idea from the first being that created everything, or possibly the being that created everything. And then the god of Warrior then was so proudly to say, I don't need a body because I achieved the true knowledge. He became a contradiction. He started contradicting himself. His own being became a contradiction. And he was like, well, I want you to understand this contradiction. And Lane just said to him, you can't, because you don't have a body. And you need a body to understand this contradiction. Because of that, he started materializing. And shit went crazy. For some reason, he couldn't materialize because he didn't have the idea of a physical body. He forgot about what a physical body meant, what to have a physical body really meant. Because of that, he becomes this monstrosity and start to form in shape. Because he can't win against the contradiction, he dies. That's basically how I see it. Anyone?
Okay. I tend to see Lane as more of the alpha, the omega, the answer, whereas her direct competition inside the series was the beast, the great whore, the whatever you want to call it inside of Revelations. As I've done this entire podcast, I seem to really be relating it to Revelations as a general whole. That's mostly because I see it kind of in lockstep with the end of the world, the recreation of man, how it all fits together. I tend to like reading religious works like that because people so heavily believe them. So it tends to be really easy for people to compare them. Really easy to compare the two, and it's really easy to write for them because they're already pretty well established. So I tend to see like Lane is the alpha, the omega. She's the sun, the moon. She is everything. She is the answer. Whereas you have the false deity. You have that I was speaking of earlier inside of Revelations. Whereas the false god was trying to coerce Lane into revoking her status as the one true answer. It's this entire series tends to give clues. Like it kind of pushes towards the nature of how Lane grows and her mental growth inside of being the one true god of the Wired and what that means for the evolution of mankind. It's really kind of like up to interpretation what this entire series means. And as I said earlier, I do want to understand what everyone thinks about the series. I don't really care what you think. I just want to understand how you got there. That's basically all I have to say about it. I mean, I looked very heavily into the series, and I wound up giving it a 9 at the end of the day. Could it have gotten an 8? Absolutely. Easily. It wouldn't have even been that much of a challenge. But I gave it a 9 because I personally enjoyed this whole looking into the religious aspects, and I really missed the aesthetic of series like this. I like the subject. I just basically like everything about it. So it scores a 9 for me, and I'm pretty sure everyone else is a little bit below my score.
A little bit, he says.
Tori, what do you got?
Well, like I said, to me it's kind of hard to draw a conclusion to this story because I pretty much fell out fairly early on and struggled to get back in. I got fragmented pieces of information, at least what I think is information, and ultimately kind of just ends up at the conclusion of, okay, so Lane is gone. Right, so it's like the road there is hazy for me. And when I listen to like what Senpai's saying, is like there's a lot of stuff that I hear from him that I think to myself immediately like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I can imagine why he would think that, but I cannot say that has never been my experience because, like I said, I fell out of it, and ultimately, the only things I am left with are, is this real or is this fake? and Lain is God. Right, so it becomes kind of, that is kind of where the show takes that huge hit for me, because at the end of the day, I have an unfinished thought, an unfinished idea of it. It's like, you see a rough painting, right? Like, it's somebody started working on a masterpiece, and they're like, but it's not done, and that is kind of what I'm working with there. So I'm like trying to like fill in the blanks to make this like, how would this look finished? And then it's like, but there is too much information, there were clues left out for me to actually get a proper idea of what this picture is trying to paint. Or I can also do the other thing where it literally feels like one of those masterpieces where the artist just, took a bunch of buckets of paint and threw it on a canvas and said, here's my masterpiece.
$10,000. What do you got?
What, can't you tell how deep this is? There's at least like 7 layers of paint here.
Yeah. Oh boy. So, I took the route that the series is much more straightforward than this whole Lain is actually God this whole time kind of deal. I have read that kind of interpretation before. I'm not denying that it's possible. I just don't think that the series from the get-go was anything like that. I think the something as simple as the girl committing suicide and saying she's part of the Wire was foreshadowing to Lane's future, and the fact that she had, I use the past tense, had for dissociative identity disorder, where her personality broke as she got more and more obsessed with the Wire, and for all intents and purposes, it's being a part of, let's say, the internet. In the world, in the setting that the world has made, the Wired is basically a part of everything. It runs everything, and it's eventually going to be a part of everybody and who they are and what they do. So the fact that Lain goes through this process of losing her physical self was part of the story, and part of the process, and the fact that she was able to adapt to it so well made her kind of the top being of that world. So in that sense, yes, she's God. I still continue in the fact that she ends without her physical body. She ends as a part of it, and she's more or less made her own world within the Wire, and it's what the Wired, and that's the world that we now know. I'm saying that the first 9 did happen, and what happened afterwards is now a new world in her image.
Now, do you see how me and you disagree on everything that happened in the series? I
Yes.
feel as though that is the actual point of the entire series, is to disagree, but explain to yourself, explain to your friends, explain to people who you talk to about this kind of thing, why you came up with that conclusion. And that's why this entire podcast has been basically predicated on me and you disagreeing, but talking about it, but explaining ourselves. If you sit there and get angry at the person you're talking to about why you think a thing, then you have no fucking right to sit there and explain why you like a thing. You shouldn't. You're wasting everyone's time. This is exactly why the series was made, is for people who disagree to still sit there and, like adults, explain why, as opposed to like children.
You and Hickey definitely. You and Hickey, when discussing the show, definitely got me to look at the show more and more focused on existentialism than I had originally thought. I'm gonna have to rethink the thought process of the show. And you're absolutely right. This show is basically a thought process work. Mm. Honestly, it would be a good show for a school environment to break down. Absolutely. And have these kind of discussions.
It is a travesty when people look at this as a one-dimensional series to me.
Yep.
It deserves
from an
more.
from an entertainment standpoint, I was bored the entire time.
I can't say
Yeah,
I
but
blame you.
again, I wouldn't even say that. Like looking at this, and that's comes from somebody who didn't like it, but looking at this as a piece of entertainment is just a waste. Because this isn't really a piece of entertainment in that sense. Sure, you can enjoy yourself watching it. That's not what I'm saying. But like, ultimately, it's not like it's trying to go, oh look, big explosion, ha! Right?
It's as I was saying while we were watching this. My entire purpose into why I like it is because I like to study that academic sense of anime. That's why I enjoy the series so much. That is why I watch anime.
Yeah. These anime being made to sprout discussions is a fact. The creator did said it was made to create discussions, and I was disappointed because people were agreeing. But still, as a piece of entertainment, I think it haven't aged well. First of all,
It is not.
Well, no, because we know objective answers about the internet now, and some of the things they said were just straight up untrue, and that's kind of the problem with the series now.
yeah, no, not only scientifically, but the characters model lacks a lot of details.
Oh, even at the time.
Yeah.
For a 1998 anime, it's rough.
I miss
Like,
that aesthetic.
There's a lot of there's a no. It's not aesthetic. Come on. There's the minimum animation to be called an animation.
Oh yeah, they reuse the
The music.
They reuse the scene of Lane walking out of the house every single episode.
Yep.
Yeah, the train's just a still with a
shaky cam.
cell on the background jiggling.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Good, it's great. I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. The music, it's non-act. I'm sorry. I know Lane has a very good OST. I really like Lane's theme. I think it's very amazing.
You don't seem to.
But until episode 9, it's non-existent. You have noises. You have background noises. The background is plain. It is mostly white. I like how they show you how the wire is interfering in real world with the poles and the stains in the shadows, but still, it is very, very rough.
Yep.
Oh, the most detailed thing we ever saw was when the room was fully integrated into the Navi system, and it was all the wires and cooling systems everywhere. That was the most detailed scene in the show that I can remember.
Yep.
Yeah, that was the most detailed
And
thing.
it was a single still shot of it. So great background.
The audio quality, the audio quality as well. Like it wasn't good.
Well, see, there's a theory, right?
As food for thought.
Okay.
Can I hold on. As food for thought, it is a very good show. That's it.
I hate when you're trying to
It's
move
good,
it forward,
like,
AK. I'm trying to chime in on something you just said, and you want to move it
Please
forward.
do state your
It's about
mind.
time. God, Tori finally fucking speaks.
Yes. No. Like the point that I was trying to make is, you say, like, when you mentioned the audio and stuff, like that is one thing that I told Senpai this. I think that's very interesting. What I don't like is the fact that when I watch this, I could watch it in HD. I don't think that to me defeats the purpose, because like we said, when you get the opening, for example, this is like the best example of that. And you know the opening, present day.
Present time.
And then you get that moment with static, right? And in the original version, what happens there is, of course, we all know, Lane appears, right? And this is supposed to set the tone, because this is supposed to be like creepy and unsettling. But in the HD version, you see her plain and simple. She is there. But in the original version, you can barely see her. She's almost not there. Like, you can barely make her out in the static. So that's one of the things where I feel like technical improvements and stuff have kind of takes certain things away from the aesthetic of Lane.
Hindered the experience.
Yeah, essentially. Because, it's not creepy when you can see Lane clear as day in the static, right? That's like, okay, there's Lane. I don't understand what the point of this is. Right, but yeah, so that was what I wanted. That was what I wanted to touch on.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
So we all about done here?
Yes, I am.
I think so.
What's everyone's final rating of the show? This is where it gets really curious.
9.
Senpai gave it a 9, so you already know that.
6.
Hickey?
Lane will always be an 8 in my heart, but I'll give it a 7. It's a 6, but I enjoyed it. So +1, 7.
Tori, you gave it a 6?
I give it a 6, yeah. Like I said,
Really?
yes, because for my lack of enjoyment, I still can't help but feel like the things it did very well. I was constantly unsettled. I was constantly trying to question stuff, even though I feel like like I said, my mind had kind of already been steered in certain directions that I didn't want it to go. And ultimately, I failed to, because of that, I ultimately failed to pick up on not a lot of stuff, but certain things. And even though I did feel like I lost a lot, whether that be due to, suggestions or just my general ignorance, I don't know. But ultimately, I still sat there and I was thinking, because when I was trying to score this, I was like, I thought I was going to give it a 4 or a 3 or something along those lines. But at the same time, I couldn't say to myself that I've had that bad of an experience with this show. I can't sit there and say that I've actually actively disliked watching the show. I don't enjoy the show. I didn't feel enjoyment out of it. But at the same time, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, it didn't feel right to give it a 4 or a 5.
And it's anything but average, so I mean a 5's out of the fucking book.
Exactly, right? Because like if I were to say like, is this show average? Well, could tell me, like, fucking count how many shows you know that is exactly like Lane, right?
The answer
like,
is 0.
Exactly. It's like, would I call it average? No, it's 6 then, I guess. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I feel like it kind of displays like the flaws in the rating system, or at least in my rating system.
That is that's
due to certain things.
Go.
Yeah, due to certain things, or due to certain, like, it kind of just feels like it's constantly forcing my rating to go up, because I can in good conscience give it a 4, and I can definitely not give it a 5.
That's kind of like the problem with, well, that's the beauty and why we're talking about rating anime on the same podcast we're talking about Lane, because it's so outside of the norm that it kind of breaks every rating scheme you have set up. Yep. Like, when you actually think about rating
broke mine, that's for sure.
When you think about properly rating it, you can't just be like, okay, so I'm going to give it a 4? I mean, there's nothing like it, and it's not bad. But it's not average.
It's not average because there's nothing like it.
It's better than fine, but it's not good. Like, you want to give it like a 6.2 or a 6.5, and you just can't.
Yeah. That's like, if you wanted to properly score Lane, you'd have to get some serious decimals up in there as well.
Like, that's kind of the beauty on why we're talking about rating an anime at the same time we're talking about Lane. We're talking about the thing that beats the shit out of any rating scheme. At the same time, we're talking about how we rate things.
Mine's not. Because mine is perfect, by the way. Just want to toss it out.
Well, this definitely rips apart any scale that you just say it's average.
Oh, there's absolutely no way it's average, but if you think it's a 5, it's still a 5.
Well, that, I gave it a 5, but it's not average.
Yeah, that's...
It wholeheartly breaks that definition of what a 5 out of 10 is. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm not saying it's good either. So it's right in between. In that sense, for a number from a number scheme, it's average. Is the anime itself average? No, not at all.
It's like one of those things where you can't say it's good, but you can't put it as bad. You can't pick one.
No. The major issues is it's very rough, very plain, character art's terrible, dragging dialogue, from point A to point end.
Point end. Point
I mean, it
end
just never
question mark.
stops. The fact that I can pull at 1,000 strings of fate and plot, and just hope I pick the right one, is a major issue to me with telling a story. Because the way I interpreted it, and that's where Lain also separates itself, is it's how you interpret it.
Yeah.
Is my thread I pulled the right one? I will never know.
The answer is both yes and no. That's the fucked up part about the entire series.
I will never know. And from a storytelling aspect, that irritates and is a major flaw.
The answer is actively yes and no. Yes,
I
you
would-
pulled the right one.
I would-
No, you did not.
For all I know, I could have watched episode 1, to me it would have okay. Let's full stop here. To me, this could have been much better as a 3-episode OVA, taking out a lot of this philosophical nonsense from episode 3 to, I want to say, 7. Just get rid of it all. Just have her building the computer, have those inner wired talks, have, I don't even think you really even need the religious and Men in Black part, which is a major part of the middle aspect of the anime. Just have that moment where she's hallucinating, she's part of the Wired, she's a part of it or whatever, she becomes God, she's part of the God Wired or the Wired God, whatever you want to call it, and then you're good. Leave a lead shroud of mystery for the viewer to interpret at the end of what has happened. You still have your interpretations from point A to point C, but you also have your mystery to what happens afterwards.
Whereas I disagree. Had you have not had that little slow spot in the middle, I wouldn't have cared as much. And that's the beauty of the series. It's so incredibly dependent on what the viewer feels that any deviation is both correct for that viewer and incorrect for everyone else.
Yeah.
That's where my love for this series comes from. It's so subjective that there's no proper scoring method for it. It's how much you're willing to put into the stakes. And it has nothing to do with how much anyone else feels about it. There's no, I accept this guy's theory.
I'm actually kind of shocked on how not many people have seen Lain, because it was a big part of, at least when it was on TV. Everybody at school was talking about it. They didn't know what to fucking make of it. It was very odd. It has a 7.99 score on my anime list.
Seems low.
I
don't know. It seems about right, because the people that finish the show are going to rate it high generally, or higher on the higher end.
Yeah, but that's not how my anime list ratings work. Only the people that finish the show's scores count.
Yeah, that is true.
No, I think it has to be 3/4 of the show.
But
I think it has to be a certain percentage.
The problem is, like you say, you think it's too overlooked, but I can basically just, throw out the thing that's always said, and that is, it's because it's old. People will not go back and watch that show, especially not based on how it looks. Even with a reputation,
yes.
Even with a reputation, people will not go back and watch that show because they're watching what's coming out now. They don't care about Lain. Lain is old. Lain is dated. Forget about Lain. However,
nobody wants to watch anything before 2010 these days.
Exactly.
Well, I mean,
I just want to touch.
No one will watch anything outside of the fucking current season unless it's highly acclaimed, and even then they'll think about it.
Unless it's old. But, well, not if it's old, I mean. But I just want to touch on something on what JD said. I was trying to touch on that earlier, but what JD said about, he thought that you could cut the entire story down to 3 episodes. And I would have to agree with somebody said that. I don't think that is possible. Because even though I didn't like it or even properly feel like I got it, but I would actually argue that if you cut down Lain to 3 episodes, you would have a completely different story. That would no longer be the same show. Yeah, but I still think that you would no longer have the same story. You would have a completely different story.
Good.
It's like, but I'm generally against the idea of cutting or adding episodes to something. Sure, if it doesn't finish, that's one thing. But it's like when you're saying like, oh, they should have told this episode in 24 episodes instead of 12, right? It's one of those things. It's like, well, that's not necessarily true. Like, you're just adding or taking away episodes doesn't necessarily improve a show, and in a lot of senses, you're changing. Like, you're essentially, in my opinion, when people say they want episodes removed or added, what they're saying is they want a different story. They want something different to happen. They want different beats to be explored or stuff like that. And, that is fine. Whatever you want.
Well, that's what I want.
Exactly, right? But that's what, like, essential, like, what you're saying is, I didn't appreciate what this did, so I would like it to do something else, or to kind of have a different idea, or touch on something different. I would like to see a different take on the same story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been trying to put forward.
Okay, I'm gonna interrupt here. On that thought, how about this? The show is remade in 2017 and redone again. And there's two aspects they can do. They can either do the what technology is going to be in the future, or they can do another piece on what technology was like in 1998. Have a sequel to the show.
There are absolutely
First of all, I don't
Please
think
go, Hickey.
I don't think it needs a new one, but if they were to do one, I think they don't need to change anything. Maybe a little thing, one or two things. But one thing that is good about Lain is that the story is it's very fresh. It doesn't get old. At least the story, of course, that the graphics and the animation did get old, and
You said graphics.
oh boy, they did. But
Well, I mean, they could
Shut
call
up.
it Serial Experiments Alice. Continue when she's older.
My entire problem is there's not an animation studio with
Probably.
the fucking balls to do something like this, because it's
yeah,
Oh, and
Lain.
in
Lain was
today's
very,
world, oh, yeah.
very ambitious.
there's not a studio
Yeah.
with the balls to take on something like this. I mean, this isn't a series that they expected to make money. This is a series that they did because they wanted, the fucking academic, like, credits, essentially.
Do we need to bring up the Centaur anime now?
The Centaur anime ain't got shit on Lain, and I don't give a fuck what people say.
Well, it's like they don't have the balls to continue what
Oh, yeah.
the show could have
Yeah,
been.
they don't have the balls to continue with what the series literally is.
Who would have liked to see Serial Experiments Lain remade as a slice of life?
That's literally what it would have been, and that's my entire problem
Oh,
with the
I
fucking
would
series.
Oh boy.
What is? Wait. Like a. What is the name? The disappearance of Nagato Yuki-chan.
God.
Oh
That would
yeah.
have fucking drove me crazy.
Just a bunch of references to the original series, and then ultimately nothing happening.
Well, what I was more or
Firebomb
less
the
going
studio.
for. What I was more or less going for was have a sequel. I'm not saying like remake Lain. I'm saying like have more of it. Have more in that same universe. I think that would be really interesting. Have if you want to focus on something like back in the 90s, have something about the girl who committed suicide. Why did she do it? What was she involved with? Is she part of the Wire? Was her sense of existentialism questioned? That kind of thing. Maybe it can focus on the future, our present, where Alice is older. Where the hell did her friend go? Because it showed it at the end, like what she was doing in the future. What if it shows something where she's having a mental breakdown and the Wire's changed so much that now she's basically a machine? Anything like that. I think the possibilities are endless for the universe that Lain had built.
You see, I think the biggest problem with this entire thing is you're putting it as if the current anime scene has the ability to tackle existentialism anymore, and in a roundabout.
Well, that's why Ghost in the Shell isn't as popular.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying they have a much more bigger chance of taking on nihilism now. It's a different
Nihilism?
Yeah, it's a different philosophical thought, but
It's definitely
it's-
different.
I'm not familiar.
it's basically my take on the world. It's basically the exact opposite.
Everything sucks.
Yeah,
Fuck you.
it's-
Well, no,
the
it's,
complete-
it's where nothing
like,
matters.
They have the same base, but yeah, they have the same base, but the outcome
yeah,
is
it's
different.
basic.
Existentialism appear to kick nihilists' butts, like I'm going to do with Senpai eventually.
Yeah, it's basically
because
it's basically
our philosophy, our life philosophy are
it's
different.
basically existentialism is like, this all matters, but right now it might seem like it doesn't, whereas nihilism is none of this really matters in the grand scheme of things. You just do what you can to be be a fucking good person. They have a much higher chance of taking on.
Yeah,
Please
like
go, Hickey.
nihilism is like life doesn't have a meaning, and existentialism is life doesn't have a meaning yet, and it's up to you to make your life having a meaning.
Exactly. One's about finding the way, and the other one is about coming to the conclusion. I think you have a much higher chance of nihilism taking hold today than existentialism. Because, the thought of what is a person, what is not a person, has been thought of for so long in the current scheme of anime that basically the only way you can take it now is none of this matters. It doesn't matter what you are. It's just what you can do in your time. So you'd have a much higher chance of Serial Experiments Alice, as you've been coining it, taking place where she thinks none of this matters. I don't know who Lain is anymore. I need to just do whatever I can to make this world not a shithole as often as I can, as long as possible. As opposed to,
Well, do you think that would be a good anime for today? Then?
no, I don't, because anime fans today are kind
You
of
don't
just in
think so?
general too stupid. They don't want to think about things.
Oh shit!
Get called out.
The shame getting thrown around.
Look,
Holy
man, in
fuck.
general, they don't fucking care. That's not the point. They don't.
I know,
They don't
I
have
know,
to
I
do
know.
what we had to do. They don't have to search for fucking 7 months to find a good anime and stick with it. They just
Good.
it's all at their
Yeah,
fingertips for every second.
I think today's anime fans are much easier to please, just in the fact that some of the hit shows that we're looking at now are just simply people cooking food or working at a restaurant.
I just think they're easier to please than people like you and I and Hickey and
what I just said.
Yeah, it's just not. Well, you cut out for me, but it's just not.
Same.
It's just
Okay.
not the. It's just not the same. There's more fans now, and that's fucking fantastic. Don't take me wrong for this, but they're not as feverish as they were in the 90s and the early 2000s before the bubble burst, when we were fans, It's not like we have the fans that have to seek it out. They have to go out of their way to even acquire this. People say, "Oh, well, I have to go out of my way to find Crunchyroll." That's fucking bullshit. Every YouTuber you know has been sponsored by fucking Crunchyroll. Probably. I mean, if you have even a side interest, if you even have someone who is also interested in anime, you've got a Crunchyroll at least once. When we were fans, we started watching Sailor Moon and went, what the fuck is this? How do I find more of it? And that's how our fandom kind of came to fruition. Yep. So in general, I think the new fan, quote unquote, is kind of more fleeting. I mean,
Yeah, they don't have to go to a store and just blind buy something.
I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
there's exceptions to the rule. There's a ton of exceptions to the rule, but in general, there's actually such thing as a common anime fan now, and that wasn't a thing when we started. It just didn't exist.
at least in our world.
I wanna just to kind of, because I would fit your description of somebody who got into anime recently, and even not knowing stuff like Crunchyroll or really any streaming site, legal or not, and I can kind of just give you insight on how easy it is for an anime fan nowadays, and even me 4 years ago when I got into it, how easy it was. I found Cowboy Bebop through completely unrelated YouTubers who did indie EDM music. They started talking about Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah.
And I was curious about what Cowboy Bebop was. So what I do? I googled Cowboy Bebop. Takes me to streaming site. I watched Cowboy Bebop. I loved it. Now I'm here.
I fucking VHS
Yeah, but
traded
Tori,
my
you're
way
not
into
like
Lane.
most anime fans.
No, I'm not. But the point was how easy it was. It was a Google search away.
Yeah, I had
Right,
to
that was all
VHS
I had
trade
to
my
do.
way into getting Lane in my hands.
Yeah.
Talking about Google, I remember that I would have to search for an anime, go to page 5. No one goes to page 5 on Google to find a source for the thing. Sometimes I went to page 10 and I would cry because the site would be infected with viruses, and my PC got busted or something like that. It was very sad.
I had to go to a physical library. And a
I don't
Blockbuster
even
in
know
the back.
I had to go to college fan subbing groups in fucking Rick and RISD and shit like that just to get anime subbed for me because I couldn't speak Japanese. You know how fucking...
Oh, you went the extra mile.
Oh, yeah. No, I was the guy in my friends group.
I mean, I would record. There was a bunch of anime on TV just in the South, and I would record on VHS tapes. We just had tons of them. I must have like 4 copies in a box of Gundam Wing and Ronin Warriors, the original Dragon Ball, Ranma.
And that's basically what I'm trying to get
all
onto.
through.
Like,
All it was recorded VHS tapes because I knew I would never be able to see that same episode on TV again.
yeah, that's basically what I was trying to get onto. Like, you know, today's anime fan just isn't as fervorous as I feel like we were back in the day. Because it's so much easier that there's so much more of a ground level. There's like it's easier to get into, and that's kind of where I want to end this off because I don't want to start ranting about new fans. I mean, they didn't do anything wrong. They just got in at an easier time than we did. Obviously,
We're just jealous.
I'm fucking hugely jealous.
I'm jealous. Yes, of course.
You
I'm
know
Yeah,
how
be
fucking-
jealous of me.
You know how fucking hard I had to try to get in? And meanwhile, it's like, oh, what's a Crunchyroll? Bah! And then they got it. And I'm fucking douches, all of them. But,
Yeah, do you know how much bully I suffered to like anime? Holy crap, it was
you know how
off
hard it
charts.
was for me to find Legend of the Overfiend? But yeah, let's wrap this up. People have shit to do. It's fucking 3 hours and 50 minutes long.
Yep.
Yeah, Tori, where can we find the podcast? Where can people find the podcast? I know where to find it. Fuck. Tori.
Oh, you asked me. You cut out for
Yes.
me.
Where can all of the peoples find the podcast?
Couldn't the one who
And
did,
us.
couldn't the one who did the intro do that? You asked me last time as well. Joe.
Just do it, Tori.
Oh,
God.
fine. God. You can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud. Not SoundCloud, actually. You can find us on Stitcher. You can find us on Google Play. And basically anywhere podcasts are normally found, with the exception of SoundCloud for some reason. With that, you can follow JD on Twitter at BowlingJD. Me at FullMetal_LAX. Tori at XTrapRowX.
Yeah, but it was TOR first. Tor, actually. 'Cause that is fucking easy.
This
How can people join our Discord?
You can join our Discord by going on My Anime List and searching up Red Leaf Retrocast or WWWcast. We should probably be the only ones that show up. We are available on Podbean, and again, remember, David's Tea, over $50, 3 free samples, free shipping.
Or just drop us a message, any of us a message, and we'll get you into the Discord.
Yes, please
Yeah, so
join
we-
our Discord.
So we actually don't know what anime we're going to cover on the next podcast or our topic.
Send us some recommendations.
I don't even know if
We need some.
I will be in the next
Yeah.
podcast because Texas
It keeps
coming.
getting kicked off.
We've decided to take the podcast in another direction.
I'm getting kicked off. like I said, I'm the disposable
Yeah,
guy.
just like last
God.
They're
time.
gonna dispose me in the first. Yeah.
Well, I think we should do something from the 70s or 80s because I think we've done like 3 anime in a row from the 90s.
I still think we should make it so our anime just has to be 10 or 15 years old.
I agree.
No. Refuse.
We have to move our fucking goal line, JD. Anyway.
No, we're not taking the podcast in a different direction.
JD.
We're getting no JD. Anime is getting no
3
JD. You
versus
know
1.
that.
Democracy. We win.
It's democratic socialism.
All right. Well, I guess we'll exit to the ending of Serial Experiments Lain.
And you don't seem to understand. Alright, peace.